Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, April 6. According to provincial protocols, we are having a Zoom committee meeting. So it's just myself and the clerk in council chambers, and up in the balcony is our two deputy clerks taking the minutes and helping us with Zoom. Just a reminder that there are no final decisions being made here today. These are simply recommendations that will go to the next council meeting on April 20th. All of council is present on Zoom, as are our staff as needed for their reports. I will call the meeting to order and ask if I can get an adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Yeo. Call the question. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right into deputations. We have a couple of deputations. I'll just remind the deputants that they have 5 minutes to make their deputation. Item 4.1 is a request for water bill relief for 121-123 William Street North in Lindsay. Marcia Watts is joining us. Are you there, Marcia?
I'm here.
Hi, Marcia. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, thanks.
Okay, we can hear you. It's you and Travis. Sorry, I missed out Travis there, but go ahead. You've got 5 minutes. Go ahead. You're on.
Thank you very much. Travis and his wife Claire and I purchased this property a few years ago, about 4 years ago. We've significantly invested. I'm sure most of the people here know the corner of William Street in Colborne. It is a triplex, and we have a tenant who's been with us since we purchased. This year has been a difficult year with COVID, and anyway, I did receive a utility bill with a shocking amount in water charges. So I contacted the municipality and spoke with a very helpful person, Lori Monahan. Lori directed me, instructed me about how to check for constantly running water of any kind. So I did what she suggested, and she told me that a toilet running would certainly, or a tap running would certainly amount to a huge bill increase like this. So I did go and check, and yes, in fact, there was consistently running water, and I checked with both of the tenants in the other units in this building, and heard back from one tenant that there was no problem, heard back from the second tenant that yes, there had been some problems with a running toilet. I contacted Travis, who takes care of all of our maintenance issues, immediately, and he followed up and did an on-site visit. Travis, I'll turn it over to you.
So I went to the house. The toilet itself actually wasn't running at the time that I was there. We replaced it anyways, put a new toilet in. I did notice the faucet was dripping in the kitchen. We replaced that. I checked the other fixtures at the time. None of them were leaking. Unfortunately, right now with all the COVID protocols going on, we haven't been doing interior inspections like we normally would. Just for the safety of tenants. And unfortunately, I guess, I don't know. All I can say is the tap was dripping a little bit. The toilet at the time wasn't leaking when I was there, but we have replaced everything. We're, trying to do our best to keep standards up. Beyond that, $1,500 for a water bill is a lot to swallow right now.
It is difficult for us, and this is very, very affordable rent that we're charging this tenant. This was a rent, as I said, that was in place when we took this on. We have kept this tenant, and it's really, this unit costs us money every month, and so we're coming to the council to ask for a $1,000 adjustment to this bill plus any penalties for past due amounts. We feel that with COVID and the fact that we're doing our very best to continue to work with to support the community and to provide affordable housing, that we would really appreciate the support of the municipality in this.
Okay, thank you, folks. I'll just get a motion to receive your deputation, and then we'll see if there's any questions from council. Can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Vale. Any questions for either of the deputants regarding the request? I'm seeing no questions, so we have a motion to receive. So all in favor? That's passed. So a motion to receive means that we're just receiving your deputation at this point. The one comment I will make, folks, is our policy is very specific, and I'm sure you were quoted that following circumstances will not qualify for an adjustment to account. Obvious or hidden leaks and, toilets and plumbing fixtures and such. And the rationale for that is obviously that the municipality can't cover the water bill of everybody who has a leaky tap or a leaky faucet, but totally understand your circumstances. So I certainly can't support a rebate of that amount. What I will put forward, and council can do what they want, but I'll put forward an idea that we've received your deputation, that we offer you a 6-month payment plan, interest and penalty free, to try and assist with the costs, which I think falls within our policy, and I know staff are good with that. So that's what I would propose if anybody wants to move that, unless somebody has another idea at this point. What do you wish to do, council? Anything? Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recognize this because it's a rental place. It does not fall under the provisions of the of our policy, but we just made a substantial waiver on another business in the downtown where we offered them back 50% as we offered them back what would normally be covered under a building if in fact it qualified under our policy. That was a big business. We did it for them. I'm sure we can find something to come up with for a small business. I'm well aware of the house. I live directly across the road from it, and I'll put that right out there. The improvements to this place, it's taken an eyesore and made it a jewel, and they've done nothing but work hard. And I think I think it's something that we could do, and I'll offer that as a motion. I'm looking for a seconder.
Offer what as a motion? You want to clarify?
Oh, that we apply the policy that we normally do. For example, if I had that same problem here where I identified a leak, they would average my last 3 months of bills and refund me 50% of that, or waive 50% of the bill. That's what would happen if I, as a property owner living in my own home, that's the relief that I would get, and I'm just asking that we apply the same relief to Ms. Watts.
Okay, let me see if we can get a seconder. Anybody want to second that motion? Councillor Ashmore? You've spoken to it, Councillor Dunn. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think I've pretty much covered it.
Councillor Ashmore, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. Just briefly, Councillor Dunn, he pretty well covered all the angles here. These owners have been quite proactive in targeting what this issue was, and they dealt with it. And I think it's just a matter of fairness. Like, we do treat everybody equally here, whether it's a business or a residential unit. And these people here have certainly invested a lot of money into this building, let alone the taxes that they pay and contribute to this community. So I certainly support this motion. It's just about fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm going to speak against the motion, just because I know that with the people of this, certainly this property has been improved. I've driven by it and all kind of stuff. But my brother and I were landlords for a number of years in the town of Lindsay, and we had quite a number of tenants over the years. And I know that these things do happen. Though the sinks do leak and the toilets do leak, but we always accepted it as a responsibility of ours. And when we were the owners, if they wouldn't pay, we ended up paying. So that's what my position is. That I think that would be my position. I'd speak against the motion.
Thank you. Anybody else want to question, comment? Okay, I'm going to speak against the motion as well. Certainly not because, you haven't invested a lot of money. We do have a policy. We put a policy in place. It's very specific. We open the door to everybody with a leak in their home. We're opening an awful big door here, and that bill has to be picked up by other water users in the municipality. So I will support the waiving the penalty and interest, but I won't support giving you a rebate. I find it interesting that 2 weeks ago at our council meeting, when we had a resident asking for a rebate on a high water bill, and they couldn't identify where the leak was, the comment was made that if we had known it was a leaky toilet, we obviously wouldn't have been able to offer the rebate, but because we don't know what the leak is, we were able to give them a rebate. So we're not being very consistent as we move forward here, but I'll leave it at that. Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there is perhaps one mitigating circumstance here that Mr. Doble raised, and that is with a pandemic and not being able to do their normal maintenance and inspection as a result of not wanting to invade somebody's space. I think we're under special circumstances here. And as a result of that, I don't think we're going to be inundated with people coming in with high water bills. And I think it's quite reasonable considering they moved as soon as they knew there was a problem and replaced the toilet and taps. I'm quite prepared to support Councillor Dunn's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions, so I'll call the question. Is everybody clear on the motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? I need your hands up. Sorry, I got 4. All opposed? Motion fails. 5 opposed, 4 in favor. Does anybody want to move a motion to offer a 6-month payment plan and waive the penalty and interest? Councillor Dunn, you'll move that, seconded by Councillor Yeo. I'll call the question on that one. All in favor? That motion's passed. Thanks, folks. Appreciate you coming and sharing your concerns with us today. And thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Item 4.2 is our next deputation, which is a request for the construction of a culvert under Pleasant Point Road. Colleen Cook, there you are. Can you hear me, Colleen?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
We can hear you. So again, you got 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor Latham and Council, for allowing me to address you today. And thank you to Councillor Ashmore for assisting us in bringing this issue before Council. I'm here today on behalf of the Pleasant Point community to ask that a culvert be installed under Pleasant Point Road, connecting the canal to Kennedy Bay. Our canal is in danger of filling in with silt due to poor water flow. The 95 residents who signed our petition, which I believe you have along with the photo supporting it, are paying taxes on waterfront property that may soon no longer be waterfront. So how did we get to this point? Well, the Pleasant Point Canal, for those of you unfamiliar with it, was built back in the 1960s. It stretches between Sturgeon Lake and Pleasant Point Road, and it has approximately 65 residences with deeded access to the canal. And when the canal was originally constructed, it was intended that a culvert be built under Pleasant Point Road, connecting the canal to Kennedy Bay. And then this would have ensured continuous water flow and a healthy aquatic ecosystem. Unfortunately, due to political interference at that time, the culverts were never constructed. Now, I've spoken with some of the old timers, and there's a bit of local lore I'd like to share with you that the then premier at the time, who owned property on Leslie Frost, declared that he didn't want to live on an island, so the plan to install the culverts was killed. Be that as it may, 50 years later, we're paying the price before this interference. Due to this lack of continuous water flow that should have been there, the sediment is filling up the canal. We actually measured the sediment depth at the far end of the canal next to Pleasant Point, and it's 4 feet deep. The water there is only about 12 or 18 inches deep now. And when the canal was constructed, the whole canal was 4 feet deep. So if you look at the pictures that were submitted along with the petition, you'll see that the end of the canal is choked with weeds. And the docks located at the end are practically unusable. And the weeds are so thick, we can't even get our kayaks and canoes down to the end of the canal. Another concern we all have is the smell of the decaying vegetation. It is truly overpowering in the summer. And I invite any of you to take a walk down on Pleasant Point and you will see what we mean. One longtime resident told me he can't even sit out and enjoy his waterfront property because of the smell on the canal. We also have a big problem with mosquitoes and flies due to the stagnant water, and we're all concerned about West Nile virus and the disease vectors caused by this. So residents are being taxed for waterfront property, but we can barely launch boats in the canal and forget ever being able to swim on our waterfront property. So the residents of the Pleasant Point Canal have been asking for a solution for this issue for the past 50 years. We haven't had any assistance from any level of government. We in our canal have reached basically a crisis point. If action isn't taken soon to address the water flow issue, there may be no canal. And all we're asking is that the original works that were scheduled back in the 60s to install the culvert be completed. We respectfully ask that you support Councillor Ron Ashmore's memo to build a culvert under Pleasant Point Road. Thank you for attention, and we look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me get a motion. I'll ask for a motion to receive the deputation and the petition that was submitted as well. Councillor Yeo, Councillor Ashmore, will you second that? Yep. So we got a mover and a seconder. Any questions for Ms. Cook? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm somewhat familiar with the canal. I never so that canal runs. All right, let's just for conversation's sake, let's have the Pleasant Point Road going north and south because I get all screwed up there. So that canal extends to the east after Pleasant Point Road, or there's a body of water there. Could you?
It extends, well, I would say it extends north from the lake, Sturgeon Lake, up to Pleasant Point Road. And then on the other side of Pleasant Point Road, less than a kilometer away, is Kennedy Bay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so does that sort of orient you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, like, I didn't realize there was a body of water on the other side of Pleasant Point Road, so I was trying to figure out how a culvert would.
Yeah,
would work for you.
there's open kind of marsh, undeveloped land in there that it had always intended to flow through to Kennedy Bay.
All right, I've been up there for years and I never realized that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Cook regarding the deputation? Councillor Seymour Fagan and then Deputy Mayor O'Reilly.
Yes, hi, thank you. Through you to the deputy. I'm just wondering, I've got my map up here and I can see how it, like, same as in the photos, how it dead ends there. So on the other side of Pleasant Point, who owns that land that we would be dumping the water onto?
Well, you wouldn't be, thank you for asking the question. The water wouldn't be dumping. The water would be following the natural flow from Kennedy Bay through to the canal and vice versa. So there's no dumping of water. It would be the natural flow. And there is already, it's very difficult to see in the maps due to vegetation overhead, but there is a stream bed that flows through there that would take the water back and forth between the two. Kennedy Bay would benefit as well because they also are experiencing stagnant water at the far end of the opposite end of their bay.
Okay, so at the opposite end, so instances, like not instances, like on Sturgeon Lake then, okay.
Yeah.
So how, okay, so who owns the land on the other side of Pleasant Point Road?
There, I believe there's several landowners who back onto what would have originally been planned to be a functioning canal through there. So the property that would have been the canal, I honestly don't know that it is owned by anyone. That would be a good question, something to be investigated by people who have access to that kind of information. I know there are we call them back lots off Rose Street, but they don't go all the way through. They stop at that creek bed.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, go ahead.
Thanks very much to you, Mr. Mayor, to Colleen. I have a few questions. First of all, obviously you've talked to the Trent Severn. It's their body of water. I'm very familiar with it. I've cottaged down there. I had my boat parked in the canal for probably 20 years at Mary Hall's at the very entrance just going into Sturgeon Lake. And and I know that over time weeds have come in and all that kind of stuff. But I'd be interested to know what the response was from Trent Severn. I'd be interested to know who's going to dredge the canal, if in fact something this was going to happen. And I know the marshland to the very east, as I would call it, heading towards Kennedy Bay. I would find I don't know how that would drain or keep the other property drained if in fact culvert was to be put in. And I was wondering if you talked to or maybe Councillor Ashmore can answer. Maybe talk to our roads people. That's all. So first of all, the Trent Severn and do they talk about dredging the canal and whose responsibility that would be?
Right. We haven't approached Trent Severn Waterway or Kawartha Conservation about this issue. We felt first to get the originally planned culvert installed would be the first step. It is interesting that Kawartha Lakes Conservation included our canal in their 2014 study of the Sturgeon Lake watershed, in which it was identified that our canal was becoming an issue with invasive aquatic species due to poor water flow. And that study, adopted by council, actually recommended several proactive steps to improve the quality of the water, which included aeration and treatment of the water. Dredging is not really a favored practice for canals due to the impact on the wildlife. There's several new technologies now out there, primarily aeration, but also using natural anaerobic bacteria that can digest the plant matter and the silt. And then that gradually improves water flow. And there are several different areas within the Kawarthas that are successfully using this technology, all of which does need to be explored. And I may be back in front of council in future discussing these options to help for the long-term solution of this problem. But right now we felt that getting some kind of flow of water between the existing creek bed on the other side of Pleasant Point and into our canal would be the first step, and then move forward with additional steps for long-term sustainability of the canal health.
Thank you for that. I just wouldn't know how much flow. I know the property to the, as I would say, to the east going towards Kennedy Bay, and it's very marshy. It's very everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure unless that property's dredged how you're ever going to get any flow.
Mm-hmm.
because down by the little church there and all that kind of thing, stuff down there, it's very marshy. It looks like, as Councillor Dunn said, he wasn't familiar with anything to the east. It just, the road
Yeah.
dead ends it. So I think it would be, my guess, it would be a challenge to get dealing with the Trent Severn or dealing with conservation, whoever the appropriate authorities are, to get that area opened up so you could actually get a flow.
Well, we can have that discussion when we get to the memo. Maybe
Okay, I'm
that's a
sorry.
better discussion when we get to the memo.
Okay.
Are there any further questions for the deputant? Just regarding the deputant and any clarification. Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank Colleen and all the people who came together and brought this to the table here. So what I wanted to say here was that basically what this is an unfinished infrastructure project from back in the 60s that was never finished from Fenelon Township. This is part of Fenelon Township. And Fenelon Township on the south side of Sturgeon Lake goes from Pickerel Point to Kennedy Bay. And this project was never finished. It was always intended to be finished. So if you look on page 24, the picture on the top certainly spells it all out there, the congregation of all the sediment and the algae there. So it's something that, water flow, it's about water flow. It's about the health of the waterway and obviously the health of the people too. So these people are paying waterfront taxes. What we're doing here is just trying to get this on the table. We'll try and get a solution, but for the first time in 50 years, we've got this at the council table, and I think this is certainly a good start. But we'll deal with this when the report comes later in the agenda. But I want to thank Colleen there for her work.
Agree, thank you. Any other questions for the deputant? Okay, we have a motion to receive the deputation and the correspondence and petition that came with it. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you, Ms. Cook. We'll see what we can do when we get to the memo later in our agenda. Thank you for sharing your concerns with us. Okay, we'll move down to item 5, which is correspondence. 5.1 is correspondence regarding a concern regarding the COVID-19 lockdown from Peter and Laura Wells. Can I get a motion to receive, please? Councillor Ashmore, second by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Questions? Question, Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to thank Peter and Laura. I've talked to these people here, these residents, and I think their points should be heard, and we can't just sweep this aside. Lockdowns do increase depression, anxiety, isolation, alcoholism, self-harm, suicide, domestic abuse, overdoses, cancer deaths, cardiac deaths, unemployment, homelessness, business closures, poverty, wealth gap, education loss, and rights violations. So I think this is basically what they're trying to get across here, and I think that we should, we're going to accept that we're going to receive this, but they're not just the only people who are thinking this right now. So I mean, I think another thing what they want to say is that there has to be some sort of alternatives to lockdowns, and we're not hearing enough of this, but I'm certainly putting it out there, and these people are too. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have a motion to receive. Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to Ron, since he seems to have been talking to these people. Are these people under the impression that we're responsible for the lockdown? Because it's farthest thing from the truth. We're following provincial guidelines. Like, are they aware of that, or they think it's a city of Kawartha Lakes that's doing it?
No, they're aware that it's all directed from the provincial government, but there have been other municipalities in Ontario that have spoken about this and said to the people that maybe there's other alternatives, and they do understand their plight, and businesses and individuals are suffering through these lockdowns. Yeah, we don't have much say over it. Obviously, it's provincial matter, and they know that. So that's just what they're saying, is that they would like recognition from municipal councils that this is a problem, and we know that we've got a pandemic. But however, there's another side of the story too, that I think that they have the right to voice their opinion, and they're not being heard. So it's just their point of view. They just wanted to have it received.
We have a motion to
Well,
receive.
And I thank you for that. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I thank you for that, and I have my opinions on it too, and one day I'll share those. because I don't agree with everything as well. So long as they're not of the illusion that we have any way we can change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion to receive. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. 5.2 is correspondence regarding Bill C-273, a national strategy for guaranteed basic income, from Heather Kirby, Chair, Kawartha Lakes Food Coalition, and Aisha Malik, Chair, Food Security Working Group. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence, please? Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Elmsley. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. 5.3 is correspondence regarding Bill C-273, a national strategy for guaranteed basic income, from Marina Hodson, Executive Director, Kawartha North Family Health Team, and Mark Cox, Executive Director, Point in Time Center for Children, Youth, and Parents. Can I get a motion to receive that correspondence as well, please? Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any questions? All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. 5.4 is a request from the correspondence request from Lindsay Downtown BIA regarding garbage containers for privately owned buildings, from Steve Podolsky, Vice Chair, Lindsay Downtown Business Improvement Association, and Melissa McFarland, Executive Director, Lindsay Downtown Business Improvement Association. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence, please? Councillor Dunn, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Any questions? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, just, there we go. Just a quick comment on it. This is an ongoing issue. The BIA is trying to get something going on it. We recognize it would be grandfathering and all those other issues, but what's happening is people living in the apartments above the various buildings aren't being provided with garbage bins associated to their business. They're looking for some sort of movement from the city to create a bylaw, or to at least consider creating a bylaw where that if you have residences over top of your buildings, you're required to provide garbage bins. It's a pretty reasonable request, and I would make that motion after the receive.
Okay, I'm not sure we can, we'll talk about it when you do it. I'm not sure we can regulate that, but I guess that's another discussion. So we have a motion to receive. Any questions on that? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. You had a follow-up motion, Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, I would make a motion. I would move that bylaw, I guess it's bylaw, or staff prepare a report on the feasibility of regulations to require property owners to, to provide garbage collection or garbage bins at the back of their businesses. It's a city problem because if the owners don't look after their tenants' garbage, then it becomes our garbage out in the main street. So it is a city problem. So I'd make that motion.
Okay, second by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Are you seconding it, Pat? I don't know, you can get your hand up. Are you seconding it, Pat?
Yes?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just thanks. Sorry, I thought I had my hand up. Just to echo the words of Councillor Dunn, we had the BIA meeting, and basically is not to dwell on it, but some of the landowners don't have garbage collection out back, and they're either putting them in other people's garbage, or they're putting them on our main street and overflowing the ones there. So maybe you look forward to a report coming back.
Don't these, just question, Councillor Dunn, don't these tenants get regular garbage pickup like everybody else does in the city?
And that's a good question. Being backyard tenants, I don't know where they put their garbage. Well, I do know where they put their garbage. Unfortunately, they put it out on Kent Street in the various garbage cans that are set up on Kent Street for passersby to put garbage in. They're not designed to be the normal pickup spot. So what we get not just on Thursdays, which is garbage day. What we get all week long is people putting garbage out on the street and waiting, hoping that somebody comes along and picks it up. If the landlords are required to provide that garbage collection, then we can hopefully expect that the tenants will use it. But right now they're not. Right now they're using the main street, and they're not doing it on garbage day.
Okay, thank you. I gotta admit, I'm struggling with this one, why the BIA can't do it, do it as a mandate from them to their membership and perhaps go at it that direction, but fair enough, it's just for a report back, so. Any other questions regarding the motion? Everybody clear? Okay, call the question, all in favor? Motion passes, thank you. Okay, we'll move in, that's it for correspondence. We'll move into item 6. We have a presentation, 6.1, from the Committee to Rebuild the Ops Community Center. Dennis Callahan and Karen Lynch are on the line joining us. I believe Karen Lynch is going to go first. Is that you there, Karen, under Dennis's computer? Hello, can you hear me okay?
Hello, I can hear you great.
Okay, we can hear you just fine, so go ahead.
Sorry, just before we begin, how long do we have for our presentation?
30 seconds.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. No.
I'm just kidding. Well, if you can just target around 10 minutes would be great.
Okay, all right, that's great. All right, so hello and thank you for allowing us to present today. We're speaking on behalf of the Ops Rebuild Group, asking you to change your decision on closing the Ops Community Center. The Ops Community Center is a landmark in our community, and I personally think we should do what we can to rebuild it for future generations. I started my journey at Ops strapping on a pair of skates as soon as possible in the Can Skate program, and then into hockey and baseball, where I met and maintained some of my strongest lifelong friendships. If I wasn't on the ice, I was watching one of my 2 brothers playing. Well, not so much watching them play. I was either up on the gondola, down on the box, or buying candy from the canteen with friends, helping the Ops Ladies Auxiliary, or attending Jack and Jill's. I met my mentors and learned so much about hard work, respect, teamwork, and life in that building. Lessons that have gotten me to where I am today. Many fun times were had, but in my experience, it is what the community does when a member experiences grief that I will always hold most closely. Having the entire Ops community rally around my family when we experience loss is something I will truly never forget. The Ops community is an amazing one, and this community center is a fundamental part of local life and a large part of our heritage. Without the Ops Community Center, we lose a large part of the small town lifestyle we all know and love, and the greater sense of community as a whole. But don't just take our word for it. When we started this petition, we knew we'd have the support of the community, but the support we've had is more than overwhelming. We've had 1,355 people sign our petition thus far, and the responses are still coming in. Many have sent in messages of support, and we wanted to share some stories from community members that we found particularly touching. So the first story, as a single mother new to the area many years ago, I can tell you that the Ops Arena was such a great resource for both my son and I. We met so many great people we wouldn't have met otherwise. Being a small community center, the fantastic welcome taught us both about what it means to be part of a community and how to give back as well. We spent many years in the arena, which was time well spent as it kept us busy and my son off the streets. They said to keep a kid out of hot water, put him/her on the ice. Life skills, friendships, commitment, self-esteem, teamwork, how to celebrate wins appropriately, and how to accept losses with dignity, along with respect, responsibility, were all taught at the Ops Arena. It was also an outlet that let my son get out and away from his mother. I will forever be thankful to the dedicated arena staff, coaches, volunteers, and everyone we met along the way. Please let future generations learn, grow, and enjoy our little hometown arena. I know my son can't wait to take his son there and show him the trophies and his team picture that still hang there. Just look at those great and happy faces, all grown up now and still around with children of their own. So the second story. Both of our boys played at the Ops Arena for years. The camaraderie and friendships they have and still have associated with the Ops Arena is amazing. Kids need this sport for their mental and physical health. please don't close the community center. The Ops Community Center was built by the community for the community, and through many organizations that use this space, the community continues to give back through supporting different local charities. The Sunday Men's League raises money every year for Jumpstart, and the community center has also been used for Walk for Cancer, just as a couple of examples. But it also goes deeper than that. These strong relationships we make turn into business and economic relationships for our community. Many of these businesses give back in many ways to the city of Kawartha Lakes. It's not just a building, a hockey rink, an event space, or a dollar sign on a financial statement. It's a place where the community can grow and congregate together. It's a place where best friends meet for the first time. It's a place where you learn that there's more to life than winning and losing. It's the lessons you learn along the way. It's where you have your grade 8 graduation and many free skates through the school. It's a big part of our community and a big part of the people who live here. And this is particularly important at a time where we are realizing how crucial social interaction is for our mental and physical health. We want to see you keep the Ops community and rebuild it for future generations to be able to enjoy it like we did. So I'm going to pass it over to Dennis Callahan now for a few more words.
Thank you, Karen. Mr. Mayor, councilors. We are here representing over 1,300 people who have signed a petition to ask you to change your decision about closing the Ops Community Center. As you just heard previously, the Community Center has played a crucial role in developing our next generations. It may be a dedicated coach teaching our youth how to work as a team, or maybe a team giving back to the community by donating funds to a local charity. These intangibles are not seen on a balance sheet, but they are definitely felt in our community. Our community spirit is alive and well, and through our community center, we have learned how to work as a team and how to give back for the betterment of all. Many of the people I have talked to admit to being very disappointed in the process as to how the fate of the Ops Community Center was decided. No part of this process was open or transparent, as indicated in your guiding principles of the Kawartha Lakes Strategic Plan. In the 2016 Arena Report, Ops had the highest percentage of utilization of prime ice time at 83%. The Lindsay Lynx membership has been increasing, and the Kawartha Coyote numbers have been stable for the past 5 years. Is there any plan as to where those teams currently playing in Ops are to go? The Ops Community Center was built by the Ops community in 1974 and has been the home to many organizations over the years, not just sports, but also agriculture and other, as well as serving as the center for socializing in the former Ops Township. This is a community center that not only brings our community together, but has also allowed us to meet many great people from outside our community along the way. I remember the debate about what to name the facility in 1974. That generation got it right. It is more than just an arena. It is the center of our community. Moving forward, we would like to work with the city to rebuild Ops for the next 40 years. We have seen the ingenuity that Jen Johnson and her team has put into the award-winning Logie Park, and would like the opportunity to work with her to do the same for the Ops Community Center. In the strategic plan, the city's strategic plan, healthy is mentioned in both the vision and mission statements. The word healthy for most of us used to mean physical health, but COVID-19 has shown us the importance of mental health. Socialization is a key pillar to good health, and the community center provides that for our community. We would like the center to be accessible to seniors and to provide a place for socialization and exercise. Why Ops? In the 2016 Arena Strategy Report, it was suggested that Ops remain an arena site as it is close to Lindsay, which will be the largest growth area in the coming years. The city website states an expected increase of residents by 30,000 in the next 20 years. Our center is also adjacent to the public school and the Trans-Canada Trail with easy and safe access to both. Demand for the hall was high, and with the completion of 407 and the changes in the workplace due to COVID-19, more families will be able to stay in our area to live, work, and play. Community support for the center is strong, as illustrated by our position. Jack Callahan School is seeing an increase in enrollment in the past 3 years, and there will be another one next year. Where does the money come from? We understand that there was close to $4 million that was set aside for the redevelopment of the center. We also understand that through impact assessments, the land values have increased and property taxes have increased significantly since 2014. We are aware that $4.5 million Logie Park was paid for mainly by land development fees. We understand that a developer has recently purchased 600 acres of land on the east side of 36 Highway, just north of the community center. As a committee, we are willing to start a fundraising campaign and have had offers from local businesses already to support us both financially and with services in kind. We can also apply for funding through the province's Trillium Foundation. Is there an opportunity for solar energy or geothermal energy for cooling the ice and heating the building? This petition is not about shutting down any other community center to keep ops open. All communities were able to support their respective community centers prior to amalgamation. We need the council to recognize that all community centers are a priority. We would like to see a local board of management formed to help strengthen our relationship with the city and to collaborate on projects and services. We want to help to service our community and make it better. We are asking council to reconsider their decision and to give us a chance to rebuild the Ops Community Center. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Karen. We'll get a motion to receive your presentation, and we'll see if anybody has any questions for you. Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, second by Councillor Yeo. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, did you want to have a question or comment?
Yes, thanks very much. I want to first of all thank Dennis and Karen and all those fellow workers that put their time and effort into going out and getting the signature and coming forward today with the presentation. As Dennis had mentioned in his comments, the community center is more than an arena. It's a banquet hall, it's a gathering place, and as I said in the presentation to council, that we never really had a hamlet like most other municipalities, and so this became our gathering place for the community center for reciting weddings and banquet hall celebrations of the graduation and all those other things that have been celebrated. The voting station as well out there. So I know that in our report further, there certainly is the option is there. Option one is to rebuild, is to look at repurposing the Ops Community Center. It's certainly a position that I support, and we'll see how that works at council. So I look forward to having that conversation. And once again, thank you for your team, Dennis and Karen, and all the work you've put into it to this point.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Dennis and Karen as well. This actually, last count I did, of approximately 1,000 people in Ward 6 are affected by this. Probably a bit more than that. That's on the low side, the Rayboro area, Ops Township, southeast corner of Lindsay. And that's been, a major issue for them in the last few months here. But I really, really commend them for rallying and 1,300 signatures. That's incredible. Just one question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dennis. On the proposed, say, if we propose to rebuild, renovate the community center, would you be certainly in favor of keeping an ice pad there?
Is that towards me, Ron?
Yeah, it is to you, Dennis. Yeah.
Yes, I would be in favor of that. Of keeping the ice pad there. We do have the lynx, Girls Hockey, that is increasing in numbers. The Coyotes, they're stable, and I know that I think it was Ops was 83% prime time in the 2016 report. So I'm not sure where these people, like the people who read prime time, would go. I don't think there isn't enough prime time ice in Manvers, Omemee to take over these numbers. So yes.
Thanks for your work there. Thank you.
Any other questions for the presenters? I have a question, Dennis, if you don't mind. So, I understand and I hear you, and I know it's a big part of the community. So would your group be open to the idea of keeping the facility and council supporting repurposing it? And the reason I ask, and I know you've asked sort of the question about the ice, but where I struggle, and I don't speak for the rest of council, but where I'm struggling is we have too many ice surfaces in the city of Kawartha Lakes. All the studies have shown us that. The needs of our community are changing. People want to do different things now, and we have maybe an opportunity here to refurbish that facility into still a community hub, but maybe for different recreational opportunities if council chooses to go there than what's traditionally been used for over the past several generations. So I guess we're going to deal with that when we get to the report later, obviously, but I guess I'm just asking for, your opinion on where we're struggling. All our studies show us that, utilization of our ice surfaces in the city would be 8. We have 10. So I think where some of council is trying to get to is that, we're trying to be responsible with our tax dollars and not, subsidize facilities across the city that aren't being fully utilized. And I just wonder if you can comment on that and sort of help me sort of get my head around is how do we do a better job if nothing ever changes?
Yeah, a good question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So first and foremost, it is a community center, and that, if it gets repurposed, that is okay. It's not ideally what we want, but it is a community center that we want there. I guess when it comes to subsidizing an arena, for myself, I don't have a problem with that as a taxpayer. I think it's a good thing to get kids into sports. Does it have to be hockey? I guess not, but that is traditionally what we've done there. The Ops Minor Hockey Association started in the late 60s, and they were basically renting ice at Oakwood and Cambrai at that time. And they came together and built this arena. So, for me, I would hate to lose the arena that is there if we can do something and rebuild it for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion to receive the presentation. All in favor? That's passed. Thanks, Dennis, to you and Karen, and we'll get to that report a little bit later in our agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move down to item 6.2, which is a new provincial vision for social assistance presentation by Janine Mitchell, Manager of Social Services. Is Janine, are you there? There you are. Can you hear me okay?
Here. I can hear you. Thank you.
We can hear you just fine. Please go ahead, Janine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity to provide an update to you and council on the new provincial vision for social assistance. All right, next slide, please. So a number of social assistance reviews have occurred over the past few years, and they've identified challenges within the system itself. The current system is administratively burdensome for both the people using the system and also for staff. There's a lot of duplication of work, and there's an increasing complexity of the client needs. Social assistance costs continue to rise, especially for the Ontario Disability Support Program. The ministry's long-term vision for human services integration is driven by the desire for the social and economic inclusion of all people in Ontario's communities. Inclusion means that all people have access to the labor market and have the opportunity to make meaningful contributions in the communities in which they live, work, and play. There would be meaningful measures to support evaluation, increase accountability, and demonstrate integrity. Planning and decision-making would be informed by evidence, and there would be a commitment to improve or make it better. Through consultation with municipal staff, AMO, and community members, the ministry will design, deliver, and connect people with the system of integrated supports that improve their well-being and allow them to live independently. The pandemic has highlighted that a new approach is needed now, and that the challenges go beyond financial independence. The ministry accelerated the timeline on system transformation and modernization initiatives. The Human Services Department, we are taking advantage of all modernization initiatives as they become available to us. Next slide. Thank you. The October 2020 planned transition to employment services transformation was delayed as a result of the pandemic, but it was officially implemented January 1st, 2021. Fleming College is the service system manager for the Muskoka-Kawartha region, and they took over responsibilities for providing employment supports and services. They have contracted with some of our local service providers, including Victoria County Career Services, Fleming Crew up in the County of Haliburton, and Community Living Trent Highlands for the Job Quest program. Human services staff now focus on life stabilization to support employment readiness. As we were transitioning to life stabilization, we also accelerated our internal alignment of services. We redesigned and remapped the service process from a client perspective using evidence-informed decision-making. We created new management directives and standard operating procedures to support those changes. Staff received and continue to receive training and resources to support them through this transition. The changes we have made have been purposeful in the design and implementation and fit in well with the new provincial vision. The transition itself has had its bumps for both staff, service providers, and the people receiving services, but we continue to work together to align and adjust processes, figure out the finer details. We meet regularly with our service system manager and weekly with our service providers and staff. This transition period is not only for us, it's also for the people we serve, and our immediate priorities are to address any critical client needs. Next slide. Social assistance caseloads and costs have been rising by about 5% each year. The current system is focused on administration and processes. It has siloed supports, and it's a very difficult system to navigate. The long-term ministry vision is for people in receipt of social assistance to achieve independence and financial resilience through a person-centered system with personalized supports, and this will start with recovery. The province is looking at efficiencies. The Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services intent is to look for efficiencies, but they will be reinvesting any savings and reinvesting them into people services. This vision will be achieved through accelerating digital delivery services, including increasing access where able, a centralized and automated delivery, and our staff will have more time for that in-person service, a risk-based eligibility review, and improved access to employment and training. The roadmap on how to get to the end is vague right now. All the details aren't there just yet. The how will be determined over the next year or so. This new vision is more about give and take between the province and municipalities. It's a realignment of responsibilities and roles. We're not expecting any additional municipal costs. We don't know the full scope of the simplified service, the full scope of the life stabilization, all the full details, and we don't know about impacts on our own operations, on staffing, on the ODSP program, or for the community. It's all a work in progress, and further information and details and guidelines will continue to roll out as we learn more too. Next slide, please. So how will we realign? Right now, the province is looking to deliver centralized financial assistance, and they will be responsible for financial controls and the back office functions that are suited to centralization or automation. The service part, the direct people part, would remain with municipalities, and we are well suited for this service as it's what we do now. Life stabilization is about a person-centered approach, working with people to assess their needs, identify goals and barriers to life stability, and come up with a plan to support them moving forward, achieving goals. And we will have benefits to support that forward movement. This is the work we've been doing for years. The difference is that we're doing it more intensely now, and the financial pieces will be removed so that staff can focus on life stability. People will be able to access support to stabilize their lives before and after someone qualifies for social assistance. Next slide, please. So right now we're in phase 1 of the new social assistance system. So the province is doing a centralized system, including processing applications, determining eligibility, and making that first payment for about 70% of all applications. And then the person is transferred to the municipality. The province is phasing in this centralized system. We have actually been centralized since February 16th here in City of Kawartha Lakes in the County of Haliburton. The person-centered supports and life stabilization for those in receipt of Ontario Works are the responsibility of the municipalities, those prototype municipalities. In phase 2, the province will be responsible for financial assistance and back office administrative functions for both those in receipt of Ontario Works and ODSP. And then the municipalities will then be responsible for life stabilization for those both in receipt of Ontario Works and ODSP. So that will be a change. In the final phase, the province would make changes to bring about a full integrated system with other ministries, programs, and supports, and would have policy to support that integration. Municipalities would provide support to people in need, but it wouldn't be limited to those in receipt of Ontario Works or ODSP. And the system of supports and services we provide already have this integrated approach. The policies that would cross over between the different municipalities are critical to the implementation of this full vision. So in the end, we would provide a simplified service experience for people. We'd be people and service focused. We would have increased use of services. We'd have a strengthened accountability framework, and we would be effectively coordinated, seamless, and tailored to the needs of the people we serve. And that's the end of the presentation. Sorry, I forgot to.
Thank you for that. If that's your last slide, let's, I'll get you to pop the screen down. There we are. And get a motion to receive the presentation, please. And we'll see if there's any questions for Janine. Everybody's frozen. We'll just give them a minute till they thaw out, Janine. They're all frozen on me. Janine, while I have you, what's the timeline for this vision that they're implementing? How you said they've already started some of the protocols, but how long do you see it unfolding over?
Phase 1 will go until the end of 2022, and then phase 2 will start in 2022 to 2024. And then the final phase will be 2024 and beyond. However, because we're a prototype community, we're already partially in some of those phases. So we're a little bit further ahead than some of the other municipalities will be. It's actually been beneficial for us to be in this position.
Thank you. I think council's coming back on board partially. So I need a motion to receive. Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any questions for Janine? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Janine, about 4 or 5 years ago, they launched the new online computer system, SAMS, which created quite a few problems in the beginning. Are they more or less all cleared up now, and or are we still experiencing the kind of duplication and multiple inputs that we had previously? And is it going to impact on the changeover? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the SAMS has improved greatly over the years, and it is working the way it was designed, you could say. The benefit of this new system, of the new vision, is that it will actually, the other employment service providers also use a system similar to SAMS, so they can talk to each other, and that's what the province is working on to make sure that this does work. They have made some adjustments so that SAMS will work for this new vision. They will have to continue to make more in order to have it fully operational. So right now, our staff have to do a few workarounds because the system isn't quite ready for the new vision, and we're a prototype community. However, by the end of 2022, they do expect that the system will be able to be fully functional for staff. And the benefit is that the financial pieces that staff have to do, which are a number of steps, are being taken away, and they are being picked up by the province. So a lot of those initial entries and computer work is being picked up by the province.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the presentation? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. All in favor? That is passed. Thanks, Janine. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Okay, our last presentation is item 6.3, which is our Destination Development Plan presentation. Lori McCarthy, for the Economic Development Officer and Tourism, is going to join us. There she is. No, that's not her. Lori, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, and we'll let you introduce the other folks if they're going to come on board, but I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mayor Latham. And as mentioned, I'm here to present the Destination Development Plan, which is the new 5-year tourism strategy for Kawartha Lakes. The 2020 Corporate Strategic Plan identifies under the priority of a vibrant and growing economy, the goal to enhance tourism, and the objective to refresh and execute the Destination Development Plan. As the tourism strategy for Kawartha Lakes, the Destination Development Plan will guide the coordinated efforts of city staff and tourism stakeholders over the next 5 years to build upon the sector's significant contribution to the local economy. I'll say actually for the presentation, I'll let the consultants go through those slides so you can, you don't need to worry about changing the slide deck just yet. The creation of the plan began in 2019 and started with the establishment of an internal steering committee, which was made up of city staff from various departments that we felt would be most impacted by the Destination Development Plan. This steering committee included myself, Rebecca Mustard, Donna Goodwin, Jen Johnson, Sherry Davidson, and Richard Hawley. The steering committee worked together throughout the development of the plan, providing input and consideration from the various departments within the city. So originally, the Destination Development Plan was scheduled to be completed in April of 2020. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the strategic decision was made to push back the completion of the plan in order to determine what the impacts of COVID-19 would be on the tourism industry and to give consideration to the implications of COVID-19 on the recommendations in the plan. As a result, the Destination Development Plan has been created with COVID-19 in mind and will now act as not only a guide for our tourism program within the city, but also as a tool for guiding the economic recovery efforts within the local tourism industry. I want to acknowledge that the Destination Development Plan was funded through support provided by our regional tourism organization, RTO8, through their partnership allocation program, which provided 50% of the funds required to develop this plan. The consulting team of KWL Advisory and Mellor Murray Consulting were brought in to work with the steering committee on the development of the Destination Development Plan. Aileen Murray of Mellor Murray Consulting is an experienced advisor in community capacity building and has extensive experience in municipal economic development, strategic planning, and community engagement. Ken Lambert of KWL Advisory is an experienced leader in consulting services to the Canadian and international hospitality, leisure, and tourism industries. Ken is a seasoned tourism professional with areas of specialization in strategic planning, lodging, attractions, travel and tourism, venues, recreation, and leisure. So I will now turn it over to Ken of KWL Advisory to give his presentation on the Destination Development Plan.
Great, thanks so much, Lori. And thank you, Council and City staff. I will share this with my partner, Aileen, but we'll start off with what was this all about? And I think as you have the slide in front of you, what this wasn't was a tourism marketing plan. It wasn't a tactical plan. It was a look at building the assets that are very strong within Kawartha Lakes from a tourism, leisure tourism standpoint, and look to enhance visitor experiences. At the end of the day, we were not looking to grow tourism in volume as much as we were to increase the spend. And by that, I mean, it is very obvious that the summer in Kawartha Lakes needs no help, no consultants, or any other support for that matter. What we were looking at is the off seasons and how to grow the tourism spend, and in the summer to connect the visitors, particularly those out in the natural areas, to the towns and cities, to the towns where money was spent. So overall, it was to look at that, differentiate Kawartha Lakes from other areas within 2 to 3 hours of the 8 million strong GTA, and look very much as well, because of where you're located, at sustainable and diversified tourism, economic development as well. So sustainability was a significant part. Next slide, please. So the elements of this, and very quickly, there's research. There is research that is both written throughout Ontario and within areas north of the GTA. Visitor profiles are important. We have to bring in what type of traveler comes summer and fall, winter, and spring to areas, 100 kilometers north of the GTA or from Quebec, Ontario, and Ottawa. The stakeholder engagement was significant. Stakeholder engagement involved 120 different people that were touched, interviewed in most cases. Obviously, this was prior to COVID, so lots of interviews face-to-face and group interviews and other pieces of information we put out. So by and large, 120 elements of stakeholder engagement took place, which is pretty significant in these types of study. We obviously had to identify and analyze the assets and what had the strongest opportunity, and also a little bit try to focus on those which had more play outside of the busy summer period. Again, best practice review involved 3 cities. I won't go into it, but an area in Michigan, Quebec, and New York State that we looked at is very similar to the destination of the city of Kawartha Lakes. The SWOT is typical: strength, weaknesses, opportunities analysis, which feeds the strategic priorities, which feeds the plan that you're looking at, or which has been tabled, I guess, at this point. Next, Laurie. So I'll take the visitor primary goals, which is increased visitor spend, because we've already talked about it, and increases the activity outside the summer season. I'll hand it over to Aileen if she wants to delve more into that, or move on to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've made that case, but on the strategic objectives, we really wanted to make sure that Kawartha Lakes was established as a leader in outdoor experiences. And so to raise the profile, you already have the assets, but to make a constituted effort to raise awareness of Kawartha Lakes assets and the image to connect those two. There are great culinary and culture and accommodation assets here, but we wanted to connect them and build upon them so that, again, they can achieve what we've identified as those objectives of increasing the visitor spend and activity outside of the summer season. But those offerings, we wanted to bundle them so that when people look at Kawartha Lakes, they see a full opportunity, a full experience that they can take advantage of. It's not just come in for a day, it's come and do a suite of activities, all related in some way, that together make a meaningful and a longer experience, which encourages them to stay in some accommodation and to spend money there, to spend at the hotels, or to spend at the retail and the restaurants and all of the other activities, and to make sure that there is some economic benefit to Kawartha Lakes as a result of their visit. Also recognizing the significant natural assets in Kawartha Lakes, it's really important to protect those assets. And so we had a series of actions and recommendations around making sure that the tourism practice is sustainable so that those assets will be available for people to use time memoriam, but also to make sure that it does appeal to those folks that are aligned with natural experiences. They want to see that those things that they value are taken care of and recognized and appreciated by the people that are hosting them. And finally, in this area of objectives, making sure that you have the appropriate resources, either inside the staff team, but also with your volunteers and partners to implement the strategy as it's outlined. Next slide, please. So this is a 5-year plan. The primary actions in the first year were really to establish Kawartha Lakes as that leader in outdoor experiences. So build upon those assets, to build the accommodation, culture, and tourism infrastructure so that there is an opportunity to expand on those experiences. Experiential tourism is really growing in its popularity, and people, particularly the visitors that we profiled for Kawartha Lakes, they're looking for they're looking for ways to touch, taste, feel, and really experience what it's like to be in Kawartha Lakes. So building upon that with experiential tourism will be a really important component to encouraging people to stay and to come back and to share with their friends and colleagues about why Kawartha Lakes is the right place to spend their time. Bundling those offerings, as I mentioned earlier, really does expand the draw and duration. We don't want just to bring in a lot of people. We want them to spend time here so that they can increase their expenditures. And we see an important component of this strategy as separating the roles of marketing and product development to elevate the product development component. And really focus on building that offering to expand your appeal in the longer term. The next slide, please. So in years 4 and 5, we'd like to see a municipal event program that supports the development of tourism-focused activities. There's a lot of community activities, which are really important components for community life, but in this action, we're really addressing those things that would attract people from outside of Kawartha Lakes to come and spend multiple days, and again, to elevate that expenditure within the community. And then finally, that leader in sustainable tourism practices. As I noted earlier, there's a number of different ways that can be manifested, from practices that municipal staff and policies and programs that they are implemented, but also showing visitors how they can be how they can engage in sustainable practices as they're visiting Kawartha Lakes, and engaging your tourism partners, be it the attractions, the accommodations, the restaurants, the retail operations, how they can contribute and be sustainable partners. And we've gone through that quite quickly, but I wanted to make sure that there was time for lots of questions at the end. It's been a really interesting project. And I know Ken and I were quite enthused by everything that Kawartha Lakes had to offer and the great potential through this plan. And we would welcome your questions.
Excellent, thank you. I really like this plan. I just want to add, I think it builds on what we already do well, which I think is important. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I think it's, heading into the shoulder season and having people stay longer is a very good direction that we're going here. So looks like we're frozen up again with some of our council. So while they thaw, give us a couple minutes. Is everybody? Okay, I think they're coming back. Okay, can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Elmsley and Vale. Are there any questions for the presenters? And thank you for presenting that, all of you. Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Yeah, just a few points, Mr. Mayor, and a couple of questions. I read through the report, and I'm not going to quibble with their choice of comparator communities. Certainly, Shawinigan, which used to be called Shawinigan Falls, it helps that you had a 30-year sitting cabinet minister and one of Canada's longest serving prime ministers. It certainly gets you some infrastructure built there, like a canoe museum. But it also has infrastructure from being a very much an industrial area up until the 80s, where it had a power plant and a couple of paper mills and a oil refinery and chlor-alkali plants. So it had to have the infrastructure of hotels and other things already there, which we don't have. And I'm also somewhat familiar with the New York State area of the Finger Lakes, and again, being within 2.5 hours of New York City, which has what, 14 million people or something, is certainly an advantage there. I do like the Michigan comparator though. But what I wanted to get into, I didn't see a couple of things that I didn't see in the report were there was no mention when we were talking about drawing and bundling of two sports that I think are big up here that didn't get any mention, and that's golf and curling. We do have, and I know they're concentrating on the shoulder seasons, but curling is certainly a shoulder season activity, and golf can go well into the fall and start in the spring. And we do have a number of golf courses, and we do have a number of curling rinks. And I'm just curious why perhaps they were ignored. And I wanted to make a point on events. We have many events in Kawartha Lakes. Almost all of our hamlets put on some kind of an event, and I know that they're looking for other types of events. But the one I'm most familiar with, of course, is Santa Day. And one of the comments I get from people who run businesses is that Santa Day is not a good day or a good weekend for people buying or spending money, because they have their children and their families with them, and they don't want to take the time to shop or to do other things because they have the family. And it fits in with their the statistic they show in there of friends, family, and visitors being the most common visitors to Kawartha Lakes, but they tend to stay in private homes and cottages, which I think is one of our problems, is that we don't have any accommodations or large accommodations for people. And I think that, this kind of strategy, we should be looking at perhaps how we expand our accommodation base so that more people can come. And I don't know, anyway, I blathered on now for a few minutes. Maybe they want to comment on what I've said, and maybe they don't. Thank you.
Aileen, I'll take one part of it and then hand it over.
Okay.
There's a lot there. First of all, as far as golf and curling is concerned, yes, when we look at the assets in Kawartha Lakes, golf and curling, first of all, is an asset that could be in any destination in Ontario, as we know. So it wasn't a matter that there weren't great golf courses. It was really more a matter of just when we look at the key elements of Kawartha Lakes in terms of outdoor activity, it had so many things that other locations don't within the city. So I think we would put that there. Sorry, what was the last point you made? And I'll take that, and then I'll the hotels. I'm sorry, the accommodation.
Yeah.
There's a lot more scrutiny. I come from that world and hotel development and investment. There's a lot more scrutiny these days on building new hotels. It's mostly limited service. The growth is all, and what ties into Kawartha Lakes, the city of Kawartha Lakes, is cottages and Airbnb, One Fine Stay, all of the sharing economy. So this is not a study that suggests there needs to be more hotels in the development plan. It's a study that suggests you have absolutely spectacular sharing economy products, and that's because of the number of cottages, obviously, and the great, the cities as well, but certainly in the cottage country. So that's really why we go in that direction. At the end of the day, no consulting plan is going to build hotels. The math in building hotels these days lies with finance players and hotel development players. So we could put a lot in there about building hotels, and it won't happen with the study or without the study. It's basically they do the math and make the decisions. Aileen?
Yeah, I wanted to address the questions about events. And I think there's two important considerations. There are community events and there are what we would call tourism events. And the distinction really would be looking at the share of people that are from that minimum 40 kilometers away that are participating in your events. And those are really the events we'd like to focus on. And again, the bundling component is really important. So we need to bundle participating in an event as a visitor with something else. So the culinary options, so making it a part of the experience to go to a restaurant where you spend some money, and also perhaps doing some retail. So combining those three elements, or having an experiential component where you get to prepare a Christmas meal under the direction of Mrs. Claus, for example. Those types of things, that would be an experience component that would provide some sort of a longer duration component, but then, which of course would be operated by a private sector operator, but then would encourage you to stay in the area and perhaps get some accommodation, that sort of thing. We've also identified the need for the folks that are within Kawartha Lakes to become your hosts in a way, to really put together those experiences or those bundles with their guests. So that they become part of your marketing team as part of the way that you encourage that longer stay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the presenters? Deputy Mayor O'Reilly?
Thanks very much for the presentation. And you did touch on, I was going to talk about events as well, and you did cover that as well. I was just wondering, when you talk about it, we identify the local events as we have couple large fall fairs here as well too, and we're going to host the International Plowing Match this year if COVID allows us, and it could be a significant event, maybe 50 to 80,000 people. I was just wondering, is there any sense of some communities that you're involved in that try and draw a significant event as compared to, with our geography, we have a lot of small town events, but I just wonder if there's any communities that are better at bringing in a significant event more frequently than others. I guess that would be a question. And the second question was, your 94 key tourism, and I think we know basically what a lot of our key tourism, is there 3 or 4 of them or 2 or 3 that we have that are more unique to us than other municipalities, other than the obvious?
I missed the second question. I'm sorry.
I think in your executive summary, you said there's 74 key tourism assets. I was just wondering, would we have 2 or 3 or 4 kind of different key ones that are different than most municipalities, other than the obvious, the waters and all that kind of stuff? And kind of wondered going forward, a lot of our tourists may be moving here as a result of COVID-19. They may be living here permanently too. So that may be a factor going forward. No, that wouldn't be the scope of your study yet.
So on the fairs, there's we talked about the Boots and Hearts event, but I'm not a big fan of the big events. I'd love to see some mid-size events for Kawartha Lakes that will that you would be able to accommodate. Like, you don't have the ability to accommodate massive amounts of people and really take the benefit. So they'd come in for the event for the day, make a bit of a mess, give some money to the folks that were organizing, and they'd be on their ways. A smaller but visitor-focused event would encourage people to stay in the area and spend longer and spend more. So that would be my recommendation on that. That being said, the plowing match is a significant contribution and a different market than you would see otherwise. And those folks are primarily there to do the business of being at the plowing match. But if you can tear them away to take advantage of some of the assets by having, programs that support the things that they're already interested in, that could be a real nice benefit in the short term. I know you said other than the obvious, but those locks, that they are a phenomenal asset. And one of the things that Ken and I talked about in the report is just making a greater use of those, encouraging people to go to all the locks and see them and learn more about them. That is an opportunity that is not available to most people in Ontario. That really, I think, is the cream of the crop. But Ken, maybe you want to add to that.
Just a couple of things. I would say that, first of all, on events, Lori and her team should focus on incremental growth of small events. There aren't, Boots and Hearts is a different thing. It's a big rock concert, but generally the goal of the municipality is to look for people who want to start events, nurture those events from a city perspective, not just money, but support, and let them develop over years. The best events, and doing event studies across Ontario, all of the top events are ones that started very small. So I think that we would probably take that perspective. The second piece was, sorry, I talked so much, I forgot what you were talking about.
Tourism assets, key assets.
I think that there's no question about the lakes and the locks. I think that it is the overall natural beauty is one thing. Not all of your competition has. When we go down to Prince Edward County and Kingston and places that are very, very popular, it's really not about the same sorts of value that a Muskoka and a Kawartha Lakes would have. So I think that that's a big part of it in terms of what the sales part is. I think the other opportunity are the towns. There's no question, everyone knows about Bobcaygeon. I think that more and more that Ontario-based travelers looking for a combination of two things: the outdoor natural beauty that you have in spades, and secondly, interesting places to shop and eat in town. So I go from Owiniemi to Coconut, so Coboconk, right through to from Lindsay to Bobcaygeon in Finland. So I think that that's an opportunity, which I think is probably understood by the city, that more and more interesting entrepreneurs who move into the area and open up places, and certainly Finland Falls is one where we've seen that from galleries and whatnot, is really where you're going to get increased tourism spend connected to the beauty of the city of Kawartha Lakes.
Thank you for that. Any further questions for the presenters? Councillor Seymour Fagan.
Thank you. And through you, I want to thank you and our Tourism Department Economic Development for this, because I know it's been a long time coming. As I've worked with the Tourism Department and Region 8 Tourism and have attended Gros Morne in Newfoundland to see what they were doing with experiential tourism. And Prince Edward County is another one, and spent 3 days there learning about what they're doing. And the interesting thing, coming back from both of those places, we have so much more here to offer, but people don't really realize that just yet. So, this is a great start to kick this all off. I have a question on something. I don't know what this is. So it says on the main streets, the notion of a 24-hour digital self-serve visitor installations. I guess it's like a digital brochure rack. What are these, and who's responsible for them?
I'll take that, Aileen. Visitor centers are bricks and mortars, or have been over time, in memoriam, and now what offers certainly the assets, the businesses in the cities or elsewhere, is something that's digital and can be changed changed very quickly. So there are self-standing visitor centers, if you want. Basically, it's a digital machine that people can punch into and look for places to go, places to eat, places to visit, and also the members, most importantly, the members within Kawartha Lakes, the people who offer the products, can update their offerings constantly. If it's a Sunday or let's say a Monday, they can put pricing in that makes things more interesting than they would have been during the peak. So that is the future of visitor services, which is not anymore hard copy brochures and physical buildings that that people go to see. And the rest of it is simply put it in the main areas, in the main areas of Lindsay and certainly Bobcaygeon for sure. So it's going to be something that's you're going to see more and more of in the future.
Okay, thank you. So they're outside. They don't have to be within a building.
Correct. They are outside.
And they could, because I haven't seen them anywhere, I've traveled, and then they could link to websites and then people could pick everything up on the phone. Because I know with my business and Bobcaygeon and the other towns, people are on their phones and they're connecting to our trails on the phones. That's how they're accessing things. So okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions on the presentation? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Let's just go before we take a break. Let's go to the report that goes with the presentation, 631. In your package, the recommended motion that report ED 2021-009 Destination Development Plan be received, that the Destination Development Plan as outlined in Appendix A be approved, and that this recommendation be brought forward to Council for consideration at the next regular Council meeting. Does anybody, Councillor Seymour Fagan, you will move that, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any questions on the report while we have everybody here? I think we covered a lot of them before. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And that recommendation is passed. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for your presentation today. We appreciate it. I think what we'll do is we'll take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and deal with our report. So actually, let's do 2:45. Let's be back at 2:45. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We'll go to reports. Our first report is item 7.1, the proposed council policy review program. Our CAO Ron Taylor zooming in. There he is. Can you hear me, Ron?
Can, thank you.
Okay, we can hear you just fine. So if you don't mind giving us a 2 or 3 minute overview of this report, and then we'll see where council wants to go. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So I guess to start, I have to thank the deputy clerk and the clerk for all the inputs and work on this. Policy reading obviously is always an interesting task, but they pulled together and reached out to all of the departments to make this happen. So thank you. I thank them for that. As you know, council has a policy to review all of your policies every term of council. And currently council has 78 policies. And so there is an obligation to review those or refresh them or update them as needed. So to tackle this program this year, to start, we posted all of your council policies online so that you could review them, but also so that the public could review them and provide obviously any inputs or ideas that they may have. And so staff completed an initial review of those 78 policies, and we're recommending certain actions take place today. And I really probably should have also thanked the previous term of council when they comprehensively reviewed their policies. There was actually over 200 of them at the time. So we're down to a manageable number of 78 and counting. So what we're recommending is that 34 of those policies, which you have in Appendix B to the report, are good as is, can remain in their current form, simply be renumbered and ongoing. In Appendix C, there's 5 policies that, in our opinion, should be rescinded. And those are either because they're outdated or they were replaced by previous reviews. And so they're redundant at this point. The next, in Appendix D, we have 26 policies that, in our opinion, require some further review and updates, more substantive than just simply administrative changes. And that's either because they haven't been looked at closely since the last term of council, or through our interactions, you've even mentioned that there's some that need a second look or some updating based on other business that's happened over this term. And then finally, in Appendix E, there's 13 policies that you've already addressed in this term of council in one way, shape, or form. They've been updated already. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have and would recommend that council adopt the recommendations that are provided in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions council has, or we have a recommendation in front of us on the report? What does council wish to do? Councillor Dunn?
As printed, Mr. Mayor.
So you'll move the recommendation as printed. Can I get a seconder? Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Any questions for the CAO on policies or any of these reviews or anything in the report? Seeing none, we'll call the... Okay. Seeing some. Councillor Helmsley, go ahead, and then Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered, the ones that are being reviewed, do you have any idea when they'll be brought back? Will they be brought back, all of them at once, or will they be brought back piecemeal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I suspect it'll be the latter. We'll probably coordinate them, though. The goal would be to try to review them all and bring back recommendations over 2021. But we'll probably bring them in blocks where they align either with departments or issues over the next 7 or 8 months.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore, did you have a question?
Yes, please, through you to CAO. Just a question on the whistleblower policy. What's the update on that? I don't need to get into too much detail, but is that a policy that you're working on yourself, or is that with staff as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I recall that that's a policy that we're looking at doing some review and potential update. It's more of an internal facing policy. And we are looking at sort of tweaking some updates to it. I would be part of that particular review because I'm named in the policy, as would others that are named in the policy. And then we would bring it forward with revisions to you this year for touch-ups.
Thanks. And just to follow up, on page 204, you have, there's 5 of them that you're asking to rescind. So is it just those 5 policies that you're asking to rescind in Appendix C?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yes, those are the only 5 that we would be recommending rescind. Either they're outdated. So for example, the first listed item, vacancy rebate policy, that's no longer provincial legislation. So there's no need for a policy to guide those rebates. Some of the others are operational based, or they've been replaced by management directives or other guidelines that council's either approved or endorsed. So they're really, it's just duplication of effort. So those 5 we're recommending be rescinded.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the CAO? Okay, we have the recommendation in front of us as printed. I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. The next report is 7.2, the Ops Community Center property utilization. Again, the report was put together by Mr. Taylor. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, through you. And I'll start with the thanks. Certainly the experts provided a lot of the background information, Director Shanks and Manager Jen Johnson in particular, on the various options and information. So I thank them for the inputs. So you'll probably recall that the Ops Community Center redevelopment update was brought to you in November. And it was really a response or reporting back that we were unsuccessful in getting some substantive funding to really rejuvenate that entire community center. And then as a follow-up to that, council directed that we not reopen the Ops Arena facility component and come back with a number of options for you to consider about how we could better utilize the facility at a future date. For those that maybe aren't crisp or familiar with the site, it's on Highway 7, just east of Lindsay. It's about just a little over 20 acres in size. It's home to the Ops Community Center. You heard the presentation earlier. It's traditionally operated as an arena and does have an active community hall facility component attached to it. The larger property, it's one of a few sort of large properties that we have. And it has a combination of green space that's active, well-used baseball diamonds in the rear part, as well as the Ops Fire Station, all within a shared sort of centralized parking lot area servicing all of those functions. There's a map in the report to help. So in terms of options, really there's 4 overall. Council could choose to surplus all or a portion of the property. But that would mean that we wouldn't be offering public service on all or a portion of those lands. That's not recommended. You'll see in the report that, again, just strategic location and size of the property lends itself to a number of public options that are either in our plans or desired by the community or the broader communities. So we are recommending that it be retained entirely in public ownership. And if council sort of accepts that first principle, then really it gets you down to 2 fundamental options that we would want some direction on to explore better and provide some information back to you. So the first is to refurbish the building as is and repurpose the former arena or ice facility component for other community recreational uses. And we put some costs in the report just so you understand the order of magnitude depending on where we go. The second option would really be to take down the building, the current building entirely, and then establish on that footprint some new public uses. Whether it's similar to current functions, we also listed a number of other potential options or city needs over the next decade that would at least at minimum require a larger footprint to build on. Haven't done a lot of deep investigation in terms of options, conditions on the site, and so on. So really, this was intended to be the first touch point with you to get better direction or further direction, and then we can explore the details. So we would be recommending that staff initiate some sort of a review wherever you choose as option, give you some cost estimates and details, and report back later this year. I think with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll pause, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions for CAO? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Well, it's not so much a question as a comment. I'm fully in favor of option number one. If we go down that road, I've got all kinds of great ideas. The only thing I would add to the cost is probably some sort of heating inside where the arena pad is currently located, because I can see a wealth of activities that could take place there in the winter months, indoor soccer, all kinds of things like that. The potentials are just amazing. So I would certainly be looking at supporting option number one.
So do you want to move that recommendation, Councillor? Is that you propose? So
Sure.
How about this, that report CAO 2021-004 Ops Community Center property utilization be received, and that staff initiate a feasibility review of repurposing the former arena facility space for other community recreational uses, cost estimates, and report back to council by the end of Q3 2021. Is that aligned? And that this recommendation go forward to council. Okay, moved by Councillor Dunn. Councillor Riley, you'll second that? Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, yes? Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Dunn?
I think I pretty much have. There's a lot of recreational activities that are carried on now. There's lacrosse, there's rugby. One of the emails I read was talking about indoor baseball. I just think the potential is all over the place there. For us that come from this community, it's near and dear to our hearts. I lived in South Ops when I first joined the job. It's the first arena that my son played hockey at. It's got a lot of fond memories for me. I recognize that it won't be an arena in the future, and I can accept that. But it is still a community center. It is still close to an awful lot of people's hearts. And if I think it can just be a thriving hub of activity if we open our minds and look at a way to utilize it.
Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, do you second it? Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thanks. I'll second the motion and speak to it. Just to echo many of the same words that Councillor Dunn has said, I think the first thing that's important is, first of all, we're going to keep this facility. We're going to refurbish the arena and hall facility, and for the purposes of the arena facility and and the community in general. As I said earlier, this is a community hub, a community center. Seeing we don't have a hamlet, I think this is really important. I think this is just the very first step. I think there's all kinds of potential, as Councillor Dunn has said, from other organizations within the community and within the town of Lindsay. And I think if further growth does happen as scheduled, or we're not exactly sure how much or how big that is, but as long as we have this property, we have this facility, we can accommodate further growth and further options going down the road. So I think this is a great first step.
Well said, thanks. I'll certainly support that motion. I think it meets what we've all talked about. You know, the needs of our community are changing, and personally, to be more frank, if we're not trying to meet the needs of our community as it changes, we're not really doing our job. And to just say that everything stays the same forever is not the best utilization of tax dollars, and that's what we're here for. And if we can, we can't keep adding new facilities to our footprint. It's just not cost effective to do that. So taking something, some facilities aren't being fully utilized and repurposing them for a different market to meet the needs of a community that's changing, I think is a great direction to go, and I certainly support this. I actually have a follow-up motion that I'll put forward if this goes through, that I think we can take it one step further, but I do want to do it separately in case not everybody's on board. But those are my comments. Any further questions? Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Just a comment, and I would like to thank staff because I know that it kind of came out of the blue about closing the arena, and I know it hasn't been easy. So I would really like to thank staff. I'd like to thank the community. I'd like to thank the sports community because we've all received the emails. Everybody's coming up with some different ideas to use this facility. It wasn't to get rid of the facility, but we had too many ice pads right at this time. So I just want to thank everybody for all the work that they've put into this because it's a community effort.
Thank you. Any further questions on the motion on the floor? Comments, questions? Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Director Shanks, just a first question, and then I have a follow-up question to the mover. The 3.9 million, is that still in our budget right now? Is that money, are those monies set aside for this particular facility? What's the status on that fund right now, please?
I can answer that, Director. That was a special debenture that Council approved if we got the grant money. When we didn't get the grant money, that money was not utilized, so we just didn't take out the special debenture for it. So we never had the money in the first place. We were going to borrow, and we didn't borrow when we didn't get the grant. So that motion already went through.
Okay, and my next question is to the mover. Would the mover consider a friendly amendment that in this analysis that staff get a quote on what an ice plant would be, a floor instead of a dry floor? Nothing harm in asking what it is for a cost comparison, or a dry floor and also an ice pad.
I can't allow that, Councillor, because it's out of order, because Council's already passed a motion that there's not going to be an ice surface in the ops facility anymore. Council's already approved that motion, so this report deals with going a different direction.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I wish there was public consultation before we did all this, but I accept what it is, so that's just what I'd like to put that out there, and I think we really should have had public consultation before we did the vote, but the vote is the vote. I accept the vote, but I think we could have done it a little bit differently, but I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Any further questions on the motion on the floor? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion's passed unanimously. I do have a follow-up that I'll ask Council to consider, and that Council directs staff to utilize the funds remaining in project PR 1903-950190301, which is the Ops Arena and Community Center design. There's approximately $130,000 remaining to have a design prepared for the repurposing of the Ops Community Center as a dry floor multi-recreational space for the purpose of allowing a capital budget request to be prepared for inclusion in the 2022 capital budget if the concept is approved by implementation by Council when the above report is brought back later in 2021. We do have some funds left there from the utilization, and I think I would certainly support if somebody wants to move it, utilizing those funds to do a design along with this, and then when it comes back in the fall, we're ready to hit the ground running to go forward. So will you move that, Deputy Mayor O'Reilly? Thank you. Yes, seconded by Councillor Vail. Yeah, it speaks for itself. I don't need to speak to it. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to it. It's there, it's available, and I think it would certainly get us started for the 2022 capital budget. So do you want to speak to it, Councillor Vail?
Oh, I think you have. It's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Helmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if Mr. Callahan and his group were going to be consulted on any portion of this.
Director Shanks, is there any, if this motion goes through or this, well, the original motion to repurpose, is there any part of that utilization that would be reaching out to the community just to sort of try and get some ideas of what the demand is? I would assume we would reach out to user groups as part of that feasibility study, but I'll leave it with you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council member and to all of council, absolutely, when we proceed forward with projects such as this, whether it was the construction of the new Fenelon Falls Community Center or the renovations to the Lindsay Recreation Complex, part of the project is having input and constant communication with the public and the various users of the facility. I do know that there's been a number of emails and communication that's come in from different sport associations as well as the local community. So we would make sure that even though it might not be a formal public meeting or some kind of scenario like that, we will certainly ensure that there is communication with the various groups that are either actively using or have shown an interest in the facility.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the motion, and I think it's great. And I just have this burning feeling inside of me right now that it's just another step away from a project that might have happened somewhere else, specifically north of Fenelon Falls. I've been sitting here for a lot of years, and it's been a few years since we've had any sort of investment in parks and stuff like that. And we're pouring millions of dollars into places like Lindsay and Fenelon Falls and Bobcaygeon. And so I just want to be assured that if we go over this motion, it's not going to take away from something that maybe could have happened, but we'll put it off another year. Because the people in Norland have been waiting for something to move up there. Now they finally got a management board together so they can maybe take the reins on that. And that's still going to be 2 years away before they can do anything there. So I just want to be assured that this isn't going to take away from anything else. But I do support the motion.
Thank you. No, your comments are fair enough. And you know what, we're trying to look at this is it's a facility that's there. We obviously can't build a brand new facility because of the cost, so repurposing something makes sense. And I think we have some upcoming projects in the north that I've been involved with since I've been here, and some that are up and coming that this council's fully supported. So certainly wouldn't be looking to put any of those aside by going in this direction. That's my comment. That certainly isn't my intent to put off your wellness center or anything because now we're refurbishing another facility. So we've got some priorities across the entire city. Our capital plan moving forward, that's a part of it. And I would certainly assume that plan is going to move forward as planned. And this is not going to derail that plan in any way. So that would be part of the capital budget discussions when they come forward in 2022. So appreciate that comment. Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions on the motion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Motion's passed. Okay, thank you. Let's move down to 7.3, which is the old jail museum. CAO Ron Taylor's done that report. Boy, we've had him busy the last couple of weeks. The old jail museum, Mr. Taylor, your report. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, and you're right, you did keep me sharp over the month of March, that's for sure. But again, not doing it alone. This one actually was very much a team effort in the quick turnaround time frame that came, and we put a small team together internally. So I want to thank Director Shanks, I want to thank Donna Goodwin, Angela Fornelli, Rebecca Mustard, and Kathy Ritchie. They got together very quickly to help inform where we could potentially go and some of the options. And I actually do want to thank the board for being very proactive, for being very responsive. I had a meeting with them, one of a few other conversations sort of offline as well. And even leading up to that time, I know you've seen, and it's in the report, a number of their deputations and certainly work planning and work that they've done over the last 6 months, or even the last year. So I want to commend them for that. Sorry, and I should have mentioned, they also did do a lot of work with us internally, particularly on their financials, on their books, and working with our finance people and working with our staff to really be open and transparent with their programming dollars over 2019 and 2020. So I commend them for that too. So this has been a couple of deputations to you last year, and then a follow-up one in March. The last deputation that came forward was a request for funding for staff to proceed with their 2021 work plan and programs at the old jail museum. There's a number of attachments to the report that you have. There was their deputation March 9th, which provided some rationale for the funding. That's in Appendix B. In Appendix D, there was their August deputation, where they had a much more explicit sort of business case for 2021. And they also did a follow-up later in the year that's in Appendix C. I mentioned that I had a meeting with them, Director Shanks and I, with the board to sort of talk through sort of what they were planning for this year in particular. And I attached as Appendix A those notes coming out of that meeting and what we predominantly talked about for today's meeting. Essentially, there's 4 options. You asked for staff to go and look at options for consideration for you to potentially fund them or respond to their request. And there's really 4. There's really keep doing what we're doing, which is status quo, so we fund them for some operations and we have skin in the game for the building and capital, but not fund any staffing requests. And that's not unique to this facility. That's currently our practice for all of the management boards, if I can call them that, or other cultural heritage groups. The second would be to respond to their request, at least this year, increase our municipal funding. So I mentioned we already fund capital. We fund some operating where it's fixed costs. So some utilities, that type of thing, provide relief there. And so if you wanted to provide funding in response to their staffing request for 2021, that would be adopting option 2. Option 3 would be to accelerate our cultural master plan recommendations. So rather than funding their staffing, accelerate or start to invest in where the master plan is suggesting that the municipality expand our investment and resources through staff and otherwise in-house. And then we could potentially provide relief to them depending on how quickly we move ahead with that option to support the Historical Society in the immediate term, but then with a goal of aligning with the master plan, which is to provide relief and support to other museums and programming of a similar nature that are public and also private. And the 4th option would be the extreme sort of other end of the pendulum, which would be that the city, obviously through discussions with the Historical Society, take over and operate their collection as well as the museum. And we're certainly not recommending that option 1 or 4 at this point to council. In the report, I provided some guidance, if I can call it that, of sort of what would be appropriate commitments or at least guidance and direction in the cultural master plan that I think it's important that we consider, because we've sort of committed to at least looking at it through that broader community support context. And I just want a couple of notes. So first of all, the cultural master plan was established pre-pandemic. And so I know in talking with the board as well, this recommendation for them for funding for staff, just based on the size and scale of their operation, was relevant pre-pandemic, but so are the recommendations in the cultural master plan. So I just wanted to highlight that this isn't a pandemic-related pressure for that operation at this time. It is recommended that collectively, this group and others, that we all continue to align and when it's appropriate, start to ramp up or reactivate our cultural master plan work. And you know that there's a number of groups that you've established or community groups have established to help inform that, whether it's the Arts Council, the Heritage Trail Network, and there's too many to list, but certainly I know they are all chomping at the bit to reestablish and keep pushing along with the master plan recommendations. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it at that maybe to start. Happy to provide some clarification on options. Right now, the report is silent in terms of recommendations, and certainly the timing of those, we would want to get some advice and direction from council as well. And again, I think I'll leave it at that, and happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Actually, first, maybe what I'll do is I'll make a recommendation just based on what I think. Option 3, I would recommend we receive the report and that the CAO be authorized to establish and accelerate the cultural master plan and recruit for a municipal museum curator or programmer or equivalent as soon as possible, and to be an established position within the Economic Development Division, and that this position be funded through the 2021 operating budget, and this be referred to council for further consideration. If somebody wants to move and second that, I'm certainly happy to speak to it. Councillor Richardson, you'll move that, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Thank you. So I'll just speak to it real quick, Tracy, if that's okay. I think this option, I think it's important. We have a cultural master plan that we endorsed, and this plan accelerates the master plan but still stays within it. And one of our focuses, we've got a lot of community groups that are looking at this from a citywide basis, and how do we improve and grow our culture and heritage and arts on a citywide basis. And I think by approving a position that was in our plan, we're moving that up a little bit, obviously assist with the museum here locally, but I think it's important that, you know, these groups that, and this cultural master plan is a citywide plan moving forward, and we need to stick to that. If we start trying to help off one here and one there, we're just going to go back to where we were 10 years ago, which really didn't work for anybody. So I know this isn't the exact result the museum at the jail was looking for, but I think it certainly gets a person in position as soon as possible, a city position, and that person can help with other organizations within the city as well. So I think it's a good recommendation, and it's our best of the options, and that's my thoughts. Councillor Richardson, did you want to speak to it?
Yes, I will, and through you. I'm actually completely in line with this option 3 as well. I mean, right now, if we had just, written the check, so to speak, to help, it was just a short-term solution, and we really got to look at long-term solutions right now. So, we have 12 different cultural organizations across the city of Kawartha Lakes. So we need to actually, like you said, develop our cultural master plan, create that position. So we're creating a umbrella of staff and management, which is going to actually help us accelerate all our cultural programs across the city of Kawartha Lakes. And even in today's destination development plan, there's a key, building block for cultural infrastructure. So I think this is the proper step at this time, and we're going to have more impact as we grow out. So that's my thoughts as well.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, you seconded it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I won't, between what you've said and Councillor Richardson, yeah, I certainly support. I think this is the best direction forward. I think it's going to help all the museums and everything we talked about in the master plan right across the whole city. I just have two quick questions maybe to Ron. First of all, how soon do you anticipate we might be able to get this position in? And if we do get this position, will this certainly enhance all the museums as their opportunity for funding to go out for funding?
Thanks for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess firstly, we're probably looking at a couple of months to get the job description proper, get it right, and sort of complete the resources that we would have in-house then to apply more broadly to the arts, culture, and heritage sort of sectors collectively. Again, probably the initial sort of priority, in my opinion, would be to then, once we recruit, would be to apply that resource or a combination of resources potentially in-house to help assist where best we can at the Old Jail Museum in the immediate term. And then we would slowly start to expand out all of the collective resources as best we can, to help inform other public museums. And then as a second phase, some of the private museums and programming that's out there. but it would all take place over 2021 with the recruitment sort of likely targeted for summer.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. CEO, you continually speak about museums. I'm anticipating this will be helping other organizations such as, for example, the Art Gallery. Am I right or am I wrong?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're probably half right. So I should have started my comment by saying we've been trying to build sort of a core set of resources to support the entire sector. So a lot of the talent is on this meeting already. So we have Emily Turner focused on heritage generally, Donna Goodwin, arts, culture, and heritage. Angela Fornelli is working on records and archives. And so this fourth staff position, if I can say that, sort of all in and collectively, should support all of the organizations at different stages. But where we don't have sort of a lead strength, I'll say maybe at this point in-house, is a focus on museum curation and collections. And that's what would be the final piece. But we would be leveraging those sort of various talents and divisions, if I can call it that, collectively in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll be the contrarian here. I think that we're putting the cart before the horse. I would rather see us complete the cultural master plan and then look at what we need rather than going out and hiring a person to do curation. And I think once you do that, you're going to set up an expectation for some of the other museums in Kawartha Lakes that they're going to want a similar type of program, or they're going to want increased funding in order to support the either volunteer folks or the underpaid folks they have doing that particular function. So I guess my concern is that I think the cultural master plan should be completed first, and I agree with accelerating that, but I don't think I can support at this time the hiring of an individual. Thanks.
So I'll just comment real quick. The cultural master plan has been approved by council, so it's done. We're just working our way through it. So when we say accelerate, we don't mean accelerate to get it finished. We mean let's accelerate what we've already approved as part of the plan. And I think we tried to make it fairly clear, Councillor, that this position is not just for the jail. This position would be a museum curator or programmer or equivalent to Councillor Dunn's comment, who would be able to assist organizations across the entire city. So I think the two concerns that you raised, in my opinion, are both dealt with.
Well, I'd also be very curious to see the job description because I know that in some of those other museums, the territory and the I'll call it the collections and the other things that those organizations do are very jealously guarded, and so it's going to be interesting to see what the job description is. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Taylor, did you have something you wanted to add to that? Your hand was up earlier.
If I could, maybe through you, I mean, you partially answered the fact that it's really trying to accelerate the actions of the plan, not the plan itself. But I probably should have sort of flagged just the size and scale of the Historical Society operation. And you've already heard from them and seen they obviously are exceeding sort of the requirements now of the volunteers. And I do commend them. I do wholeheartedly, sort of based on the update of trying to sort of manage the large collection and that system as is. But one of the key recommendations in that master plan was a focus on sort of programming, support, and curation services. And so I'll just say to Councillor Elmsley's point, it's not meant to step on toes or go into other jurisdictions. If they're operating, they can continue to do this. But I still believe that this should be a collective community resource for public and private museums to assist where necessary or where asked.
Thank you. Any further questions on the report? Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to CAO. Just a question on, until we get this curator, or at least we look at it in the budget, the building itself, are we, I know it's looking a little sad on the outside, but on the inside, those artifacts, are they being preserved? You know, these are irreplaceable artifacts that are inside there. Are the contents in that museum being monitored? Just want to know, just for peace of mind, not just mine, but a lot of other people are wondering, like, are those artifacts safe in there? Is everything okay for the time being?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I'm not intimately involved with the artifacts, but what I do know, what the board had conveyed, again, that's really their core work that they've done, and they've done it extremely well. So I should have actually mentioned too, this position wouldn't be to replace their talents, because they have a strong role to play to continue with recommendations and care for that collection, and also the museum curation. But as I understand, the collections are okay currently. I think this was a call, though, from the Historical Society that we need to do a different model moving forward. And so what I mentioned before, we will try to bring our collective internal resources and supports to them, not just while this position is being developed, but if there's some immediate urgency on collections and some of the archival work, then we'll do our best to try to help support that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the motion or for CAO? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? That motion has passed. Thank you. Let's move down to 7.4, which is the election sign bylaw. And we'll turn it over to Kathy Ritchie, our clerk, who can give us a quick 2-minute overview, and then we can go from there. Go ahead.
So the purpose of this report is to present a refresh of the election sign bylaw. We consulted with several departments, the Public Works, Community Development, Bylaw Enforcement, and the clerks. And we refreshed based on some research and also looking at some of the complaints from the public that were brought forward during the 2018 election. So we provide under the rationale the 13 points that we concentrated on, and part of it was clarity in interpretation, definitions, sort of the re-election terminology, some of the corporate branding, placement period, separation distances, shoulders and curbs, bridges, jurisdiction, quality of signage, media strips, example, the Victoria Avenue, parking and placement of vehicle signs and removal of signs placed on highways fronting private property, and criminal activity. So based on the review and the changes we made, we're recommending that the previous bylaw be repealed and replaced with the bylaw attached.
Thank you. Questions? What would council like to do? Councillor Elmsley?
Yeah, I'm fine with what's been written. I just have a question about signage size. Is that provincially mandated, or is that something we control?
It's local.
I'm just wondering why it is, why it can't be larger. For instance, when you measure the sign, you're measuring the outside, although the actual sign may be somewhat smaller on the inside. And I'm referring to things like, you know, the black highway signs that people use for community events and so forth are considered too large for an election sign, yet they're ideal because you can probably replace 20 road sign election signs with one of those. So in those terms, you're probably being less a pollutant, a sign pollutant than you normally would be. But they're not allowed because the outside dimension of those is larger, yet the message on the inside probably meets the bylaw requirement.
Again, some of the feedback that we received from the public is the fact that there were so many signs, as you pointed out, and they were throughout the municipality. We're trying to have a fair playing field for all candidates, and so we're trying to keep the signs at a regulatory size. So I'm not exactly sure how to respond to your question, but certainly I will. I'll look into it and follow up on that issue.
Okay. I think one of the other problems is, of course, we're likely to have 3 elections next year in 2022. I mean, I think it's quite possible you're going to have a federal election, and you're definitely going to have a municipal election and a provincial election. So I think there will be a weariness from the population on signs all over the place. But
Exactly.
I'm happy to move the recommendations as printed.
As printed, I'll accept that. Thank you. Second, Councillor Vail, thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Vail? Nope. Okay. Anybody have any further comments or questions on the election sign bylaw? This does apply, Madam Clerk, to provincial and federal elections as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question, then all in favor? That's passed. Thank you. I do. We'll move to item 7.5, the proposed direct sale of a portion of Denfield Road property in Lindsay. I have Lorna on the report. We got Sherry's here. Sherry, this is direct sale Denfield Road property in Lindsay. Do you want to give us a quick 2-minute overview on a little bit of history here? Because there is a little bit of history, so go ahead.
Thank you. The city owns a large parcel of land on Denfield Road, which has already previously been declared surplus and approved approved for sale on the open market. There is a strip of land in between this piece of land and Denfield Road, which is owned by William Staples Holding. A representative of this company has advised that they had previous discussions with the city about selling this land to the developer in order that they could create 3 subdivision lots to finish off their subdivision. They were the developer of the original subdivision in the area, and they installed the services and they installed them to these 3 lots as well. So staff recommends proceeding with the direct sale as requested, and they could purchase once the land is purchased, then they could add a later, because they've installed these servicing already, they won't have to rip up the road once that's complete. So staff is recommending the direct sale proceed as requested, and they're further recommending that council set the value of the land at the appraised value, disregarding the servicing, given that it was this party that installed it in the first place. And if the sale is approved, the city would have the property, or would require the property merge with the piece that they already own. And they would be responsible for any severances or part lot control and rezoning at their own expense.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Yep, no, I think that's pretty straightforward. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly?
I would move that recommendation if that's what you wanted this time, Mr. Mayor.
Sure do. Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, second. Councillor Yeo, thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Pat?
No, I think it's, Jerry did a very good job with it. I think it's fairly straightforward. I think the other people put the services in, so realizing they have the rest of the responsibilities, I think it's fairly straightforward.
And just for clarification, Sherry, the appraised value, it'll be sold for the appraised value plus all costs, less the servicing costs, or as if it wasn't serviced because the direct sale proponent paid for the servicing to install it in the first place. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I just wonder, do they have a permit to work on city property when they did that? Hey, just kidding.
Okay. That was a while ago. So Councillor Ashmore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to, I'm not sure who could answer it, but correct me if I'm wrong. Was there not a correlation between this property and the airport? Just going back, if this property was sold, that the funds would be going towards capital infrastructure at the airport. Is that true? I'm pretty sure it was going back a while ago, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you got a good memory. There was Denfield property that was to, when it was sold, was to go toward, I think, the hangar at the airport. Right. I'm not sure if it's these properties. Maybe Sherry can shed some light on it.
Unfortunately, I don't have any knowledge of this, so I'm unable to shed light on it. I don't know if Robin Carlson might be able to provide some information.
Okay, Robin's joining us, so go ahead.
Yes, so that is correct. It's the same parcel. There was a council resolution that the proceeds of sale be deposited into a certain reserve to pay back funds that have already been spent. I would have to defer to the treasurer as to exactly what she's done in the interim, specifically with respect to the various reserves, but that is the intention, that this money would go back to refund the cost of that hangar.
Yeah, I think we took out a loan for the hangar, and this would go toward the cost of the loan on the hangar. So that's, yeah, okay. Councillor Ashmore, follow up?
No, that's fine. I just wanted to get clarification on that. That's fine. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Any further questions on the motion? Call the question then. All in favor? Motion's passed. Thank you. 7.6 is the 50/50 Community Project Capital Fund. Shelley Cooper's on the report, but I think Craig Shanks is here to deal with it. Do you want to just give us a quick update, Mr. Shanks, on why this is here?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So this is the annual 50/50 Community Capital Project Funding program that Community Services and specifically Parks, Recreation, and Culture oversees. It does take into account the change for this calendar year that 100% of a capital project by a community group would be covered due to the pandemic and some of the restraints that some of those community groups might have when it comes to funds. So again, it's the annual project. The 100% allocation is incorporated into it, and that's why you're seeing a total value within the budget of 160,000. Typically, it's 80,000. And for this current calendar year, we are undersubscribed. I think that is somewhat understood due to the pandemic, and some of those groups just don't have funds to go to these kinds of projects that are meant to benefit and enhance city-owned parks and facilities. But it is anticipated that as the pandemic grows and we hopefully slowly move out of it, that we will see some applications for phase 2 funding later on this calendar year.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Yeah, and council's delegated you guys staff to, within the terms of reference, to hand out and do this. Is just here for information to council, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, that's correct. Yes, there is authorization to staff to allocate it. We report back on an annual basis just for information for council so that you're aware of which groups are in fact receiving funding.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to receive the report and refer it to council. Councillor Seymour Fagan, second by Councillor Yeo. Councillor Seymour Fagan, you had a question?
Yes, I do. So I'm looking here on Bob Cajun and Ken Mount, and because it says Director Shanks said we were undersubscribed. So Bob Cajun, they applied for 7,500, received 7,000. And Kinmount, they applied for 10,000 because I know that they weren't able to do any of their fundraising and they received 6. If you could please explain why, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
I think you're in the wrong report, Councillor. I think the previous
Am I?
report is the 50/50 capital fund. You're looking at the Community Partnership and Development Fund. So that's next.
So I
If you-
guess I'll have to save that one.
If you want to hold that thought, that's next. So are you still okay moving this one to receive it?
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I've got it here. Okay, yep, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the 50/50 Community Project Capital Fund? Question, Councillor Ashmore?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. On page 401, this is the table that we're looking at, page 401.
Yes.
Am I correct here? Okay, so my question is, there's some pretty worthy ones here, like Dunsford Community Center, Environmental Action, Bob Cajun, actually that's that dry wall in front of Case Manor. It's really, really an amazing wall and a historical wall. And it needs work and it needs money and it needs support. And I'm surprised that didn't get it. Dunsford Community Center, what was the reasoning for these two? These first 3, even the Grove Amphitheater for the Grove Amphitheater, but specifically the Dunsford Community Center and the Environmental Action, Bob Cajun. What were the reasons that they weren't qualified?
Well, I'll let the director answer, Councillor, but it's in the report. They didn't meet the criteria. There's a pretty specific criteria and they don't meet it, but I'll let Director Shanks answer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, you are correct. The actual rationale is in a couple paragraphs underneath the chart. Specifically for the Dunsford Community Center, the actual application was incomplete. They've been communicated with and advised that there will be a phase 2 opportunity for them to apply, and we certainly anticipate that they will be. So there is still a potential that they will receive funding. For Environmental Action, Bob Cajun specifically, the wall is not owned and not on city property, so it's just outside of the policy. It's not something that this fund can provide funding to. And as far as Kawartha Works Community Co-op, Grove Amphitheater signage, again, the theater itself is not owned. While the city owns the land of the Agricultural Society, it is leased to them and they manage it separately. So it also falls outside of the policy for receiving of these funds.
Okay, just a question on the Environmental Action, Bob Cajun one, that fence, is it not on city property line? And it's deemed an historical site as well. It's historical.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it's understood that it's historical, but unfortunately, that doesn't pertain to this particular funding opportunity. The wall itself is not on city-owned land.
And the Dunsford Community Center, they do have a second opportunity to apply?
Correct.
Councillor
Okay,
Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So with the rock wall, the dry stack wall, I think it's debatable whose land that wall's on, because at one point Public Works were looking at taking it down. So I don't know if we found out that it was not, or if it was on city land or partially on city land, is it available then to apply for the funds?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it still wouldn't be deemed eligible because it's not city park or city recreation facility specific. So even if it's on city lands, and here it's not, it's in behind the actual line of ownership that has been confirmed. But if it was on city road allowance, it still is not eligible for this specific funding.
Thank you. Any further questions? We have a motion to receive and refer to council. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. The next report is 7.7, Community Partnership and Development Fund. Probably the same, but go ahead, Director Shanks. This one's a little bit different. Maybe you can break it down for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to all of council. So again, this is an annual program. It's the Community Partnership and Development Fund. For the most part, this funds operational expenses, and that's why it has a higher subscription to it for this calendar year because those groups are continuing to still operate. It is broken down into the different areas of funding opportunities: beautification, culture, special events, milestone events, and municipal tax rebate. Municipal tax rebate is a grandfathered one. We don't add to that. That is just existing tax rebates that were provided to some of the community groups as they were prior to amalgamation back in 2001. The largest component of this fund is for the beautification program, and it is fully explained within the policy. And I know that staff work closely with the groups to work their way through this. It's a similar fund that staff have authorization to endorse and allocate the funds. This report is just brought forward on an annual basis, again, so the council is aware of which groups are receiving funding.
Thank you. I need a motion to receive and refer to council. Councillor Vail, seconded by Councillor Elmsley. Questions? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's not included in this report, but it's about funding. So hopefully you'll allow me some latitude here. Through you to Mr. Shanks, the Canada Day Heritage funding, it came through last year, and of course most of or all of the Canada Day celebrations were canceled. Do you have any indication what's happening this year? And I think it's probably rather dicey that the Canada Day celebrations are going to go forward. I know City of Toronto has already canceled theirs.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council, it is certainly not a part of this program specific, but understanding the question, I don't think we have any further information at this time on 2021 Heritage Canada funding for Canada Day events. I know that we have staff that work closely with Heritage Canada, and we will continue to, and I'm sure that they will communicate with the various groups that have applied for and received funding in the past. I know that for 2020, there was announcements made prior to for that funding, and then there was an arrangement to work with those groups for how they would look at expending those funds moving forward with some other kind of community programming. So if it's okay with the councillor, I will ask staff to follow up directly as we get wording both with the community groups, which I'm sure that they will do, but with council as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the fund? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
Yes, back to my original question. There's a few of them. So some of the busier villages, they didn't get the full funding. Is there a reason why they didn't receive the full funding for the beautification?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council, the majority of them, again, there are some explanations within the report. Many of them, some of the funding that they requested was not following within the guidelines of the program itself. So again, if you look at Impact 32, for example, some of the related expenses were for a trolley for an event that were not considered to be beautification. Within Kinmount, it's also explained that there was a recovery of a shortage related to their 2020 beautification funding. So they'll be utilizing that towards this. So it's either because they have funding from a previous years that they weren't able to fully expend, or to be quite honest with you, most of the time, the specific project or some portion of the scope of the project did not meet the guidelines of the overall policy for the program.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and it was mainly the flowers. That's what I'm looking at in all the villages from Fenelon Falls to Kinmount to Bob Cage, and some of them didn't get fully funded while other communities did. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions on the report? Receive and refer to council. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Director Shanks. Appreciate it. 7.8, listing properties on the Heritage Register. We had one of these a little while ago, so it's very similar, but I know Emily Turner is, I believe, joining us. There she is. Hello, Emily. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, we can hear you. So do you want to give us a quick 2-minute overview on why this is here, and we'll go from there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So this is another report on listing properties on the Heritage Register. As we started doing in 2019, Myself and the Heritage Committee are bringing forward batches of historic properties within the municipality for listing. And just as a reminder, this is the restrictions placed on these properties are only with regard to demolition. So if one of these properties would like to, an owner would like to apply for a demolition permit, they're required to give the municipality 60 days notice. Apart from that, we don't regulate what they do with their properties, renovations, changes, those sorts of things. There are 50 properties on the list this time. As usual, we sent out notifications to all the owners well in advance of this meeting. I'm letting them know that council would be considering it today. As is noted in the report, we received 7 calls and emails from property owners. Most of them just wanted a little bit more information. Some of them wanted to chat about their property because they were interested in doing that. And one owner objected to be listed on the register, as you'll notice in your report.
Thank you. What is council's wish? We have a recommendation that they be listed in Appendix A. I guess the only question is the one that didn't want to go on 390 Tracy's Hill Road. Does council wish to keep that included or take that one off? So what does council want to do? Councillor Ashmore?
I could exclude that one, please, and pass the rest.
So that report, ED 2021-005, listing properties on the Heritage Registry be received, that the proposed addition of non-designated properties listed in Appendix A as amended to not include 390 Tracy's Hill Road to the City of Kawartha Lakes Heritage Registry be approved, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council. Is that your recommendation?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Get a seconder? Councillor Elmsley, thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Ron?
No, I'm fine, thanks. I think it's, Emily, just a question to Emily. So this is what we did in our committee. Every owner is notified, and which is good that they're notified, and we got a response from some of them, but the main thing is that they were all notified. That's correct, Emily?
That's correct. They were notified about 6 weeks ago, so they had lots of time to respond before today's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elmsley, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it? No? Okay. Any further questions on this report? I'll call the question then. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it. Okay, 7.9 is Donna Goodwin is going to join us. This is a follow-up from the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Recovery Fund. It's in your package. There she is. Hello, Donna. Do you want to give us a 2-minute overview of why this is here?
Sure. Good afternoon, through you, Mayor, to Council. The Arts, Culture, and Heritage Recovery Fund is what's before you today. The report is to share the decision of the committee and the Director of Corporate Services. All 10 applications are recommended to receive funding, and it's based on the sliding scale that was outlined in the management directive approved on January 28th. And then also to deal with the outstanding balance of $59,000 from the original $100,000 that was identified for the recovery fund.
Thank you. Oh. I'm sorry, are you done? You just kind of froze up there.
Yep.
Is that it?
Oh,
okay.
No, done.
Okay, so see if there's any questions. I would certainly, if somebody wants to move it, support topping up the fund with another $49,000. And then I emailed everybody the chart which shows the eligible costs, and then we could meet the eligible costs of all those organizations and really help out the group for a pretty small addition to what we've already approved. But Councillor Elmsley, are you question, or will you move that?
I would move that.
Okay, so let's do then report ED 2021-016 Arts, Culture, Heritage Recovery Fund be received, that an additional $49,081.90 be added to the current $100,000 Arts, Culture, and Heritage Recovery Fund allocation from the Pandemic Contingency Reserve to cover the total eligible fixed operating of all applicants, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next meeting. Moved by Councillor Elmsley, Does anybody want to second it? Councillor Richardson, you'll second it. Do you want to speak to it, Doug?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Councillor
I
Richardson,
think
do you want to speak to it?
It is what it is.
Nope, you're good. Any other questions or comments for Donna? I'll call the question then. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
7.10 is the Community Pandemic Recovery Fund grant. Rod Sutherland, there he is. This is the same follow-up from the other fund that we put in place. It's pretty self-explanatory, but Rod, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Community Pandemic Recovery Fund was created in January to look at to receive applications from the broader health and social human services sector, specific to any program services from the applicants. The evaluation committee was delegated with the authority to make the funding decisions. The fund that was made up of a total of $500,000 is available, comprised of $120,000 from the city's contingency reserve for pandemic-related expenses, and up to $380 from the Lindsay Chest Fund. The Lindsay Chest Fund allocation was specific to Lindsay-based organizations that would otherwise have been eligible for the Lindsay Chest Fund. So a total of that, 18 applications were received and evaluated by the committee, with the decisions outlined in table 1 of the report, with the total amount granted of $245,000, just over $245,000. The majority of those not eligible, those were primarily seen to be not related to the sector and not consistent with the intent of the fund. So that's why those decisions were decisions not granted by the committee. The outcome is that the evaluation committee did recommend to council that the balance of the Lindsay Chest funds that were unallocated be returned to the Lindsay Chest Fund, and that their process be reinstated for this year, and that the balance of the city's contingency reserve be allocated to an additional intake or a second application process for the remaining $49,162.48 to a maximum of $7,500. Those are the recommendations of the committee, and as noted in the alternatives. The alternative is for the reserve fund, that the city could retain that as for future considerations for pandemic-related expenses. But the resolution as written is the recommendations from the evaluation committee.
Thank you. Recommendation seems to make sense. Councillor Richardson, what is your wish?
I wish to move it as printed.
As printed, second. Councillor Seymour Fagan, thank you. Councillor Richardson, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, I will, if you don't mind. I was on that evaluation process, and it was a great dialogue for almost 3 hours, and we went through every application. Everybody did their homework. They came to the table. Obviously, some didn't meet the criteria. So we felt at the time, because of having some of the funding available, put that big amount, 206, back to the Lindsay Legacy so they can, open up their applications for the remaining of this year so we can help more people. And then we asked for the 49,000 to go back into contingency into a second intake, because I think we're actually starting to see some more fallout because of the pandemic, and there are some more vulnerable groups that are going to need some funding. So at this time, we just thought it was a good scope to try to help more people.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour Fagan, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it? No? Okay. Then I have Councillor Dunn has a question, and then Councillor Elmsley. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the director. Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving us back our $205,000. The Chest Committee will certainly appreciate distributing that. My question is, the Lindsay applicants were funded by the Chest Fund, not because they don't contribute to the city as a whole, but because we had extraordinary resources that we were able to look after it as the city or as the town of Lindsay. So now that we're going into a second draw and we're returning the money to the Lindsay Legacy Chest Fund, my question to you or through you to the committee is why are the Lindsay people excluded from applying for relief under the $49,162 that's left?
Director?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe the intent of a second intake, the 49,000, would be to exclude anybody. It would be open, to my understanding of the committee's recommendation, be open to any applicant meeting the overall conditions. So not specific to geographically outside of Lindsay or within or outside of Lindsay.
Okay, because when I read recommendation number 2, it says starting on line 2, be made available to eligible organizations located outside the geographical boundary for eligibility for the Lindsay Chess Fund, is the way I read that recommendation. So the way I read that is they are being excluded.
That is correct, just reading that. And it may refer back to Councillor Richardson from the committee if that was their intent. Apologies.
No, yeah, I'm sitting here shaking my head, and Councillor Dunn is correct. We figured, I guess at the time, that big pool of money has that governing body that you're in the Lindsay area to apply for that funding then. And we were saying there's some vulnerable groups outside of the Lindsay area in rural areas that, you know, it may not fall under the same guidelines of the Lindsay legacy, that this might be an opportunity for them to apply up to $7,500 to this $49,000 in a contingency reserve. Just trying to balance it across, because, you know, across between urban and rural across the city of Kawartha Lakes. So I think was no intent to exclude anybody. It was kind of just, you know, making the scope a little broader at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dunn. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Elmsley, go ahead. You had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, through you to Mr. Sutherland or Councillor Richardson, the Omimi Curling Club, is that not a private organization, private club? And I'm just curious as to how, within the criteria, they qualify.
To you, Mr. Mayor, it was open to any nonprofit or community organizations. I believe, I don't have the information directly in front of me, that they are a nonprofit and did qualify. And again, based on the evaluation committee's review, did qualify for the fund.
Yeah, and a couple of those too, if I don't mind saying, like, I mean, there was one in Bethany as well, is they lost their fundraising for the year, and they're actually in community hubs in their area where there's other activities that go through their clubs. So at that time, we felt if you read the criteria, they fell into that scope.
So it was open to private organizations as long as they were nonprofit, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I think that was the question Councillor Elmsley had. Are you good, Doug?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Yeah, and excuse me if my battery dies, but I'm very low on battery. But I had a question. I'm looking at the list and hearing the explanations, and I have to ask about Kirkfield District Historical Society, because the reasoning for operating costs, they are the hub. Their funding is totally from fundraising and all that. So whatever the reason be, they would be denied total funding. Just so when they ask me, I have an answer for them.
Based on the criteria, we felt it fell under the cultural aspect based on the application.
Okay. Were they directed to apply for the cultural one at the time? Or was it just you don't qualify under this fund?
I believe Rod can probably answer that. We took our notes, and when we were sending out our messages, I believe we were redirecting them as well.
That's correct. We did coordinate somewhat with Economic Development Division regarding the administration of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Fund, as per the previous report, to attempt to ensure that people had access to the correct funds and all available funds.
Thank you. Any further questions on this report? Call, as printed, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Are there, okay, we're going to move, that's our reports, so we'll move down to item 8, which is memorandums. First one, 8.1, is a memorandum regarding Ken Hill Beach Road drainage. Councillor Ashmore, your memo, go ahead, sir.
Oh, I'm good with that. I appreciate it. If this could be passed, everything's good here, but they could come back and see what it's going to take. And if it takes study or whatever, it gets staff to have a look at it, specifically engineering staff, because we've had floods here since I've been on here, 2019, 2020, 2021, we've had floods here on this particular road, and there needs to be a solution found here. So
you'll move the memo as printed?
I'll move it as printed.
As printed. Let's see if we can get you a seconder. Councillor Yeo, do you want to speak to it, Councillor Ashmore?
No, thanks. Everything's here. I would appreciate your support, especially the people down there would appreciate it as well. Get a long-term solution.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it?
Just briefly, we're looking for information from staff on whether it's required, and that's pretty easy to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour Fagan, you had a question?
Yes, I don't know if staff's also going to look at, there's land use issues in there. There's people basically living in swamps in trailers on that road. It's a very, it's kind of cut through road from one area to the other. I know it very well. And there are bigger issues than just the water. So I don't know, Councillor Ashmore, if you're looking for that as well, but I think that might open a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I'm not sure which work. There's been new sheds put up, but these are garages. These are beautiful buildings. There's a house just listed for 1.6 million on that street, so I don't think they're trailers.
No, they're not. There's a whole area in a swamp. That's all. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, it is a drainage issue, so we'll get a report back from staff and we'll see if it's a bigger issue than what we're originally looking at. The only question I have, I guess, and maybe more a question for Councillor Elmsley. Kawartha Conservation recently gave us a report on the board that there was 2 local drainage flooding issues this spring and last spring in the municipality, and one of them was Ken Hill Beach Road, and the other one was on Long Beach Road, where, similar situation where the water flows at a certain time of year, comes across the road and is barely passable. And Long Beach Road was the second one, and I know maybe it's not as big an issue, and it's maybe more of a question for Councillor Elmsley, but is there any appetite for including that one on here as well as the 2 areas? If we're going to review them, why not have a look at them both and see if staff can capture them both in the report? But Councillor Elmsley, have you heard that that's an issue? Because I've actually driven through it a couple times, and it's quite severe at certain times of the year.
I was down there last year with Mr. Farquhar and one other engineer, and they had drawings, and we looked at what would be feasible. There's a large culvert there, but the drainage ditch that comes from the back, Mr. Mayor, isn't capable if they have a severe melt and runoff. It goes right back to Long Beach Road that comes down by the general store. Just above that, there's a split in how the drainage takes place, and it really exacerbates what happens in the backyards of the folks, and then it comes through to go through a culvert, and it's just not capable of handling the water. When engineering staff looked at it, they weren't sure what they could do. They were looking for some other municipal property where they may have been able to put another culvert. They thought they had found one, but in the end, it was on private property, so they weren't able to do that. And the one thing I was hoping is that perhaps with some of the changes that may be occurring up on Ranchers Road, that it may help that area. But I'm quite happy to have this included in this ask in case anything's changed. So yeah, I would be happy to have that happen.
Well, I didn't know if it would just fell under the same issue. It was more in that specific area at the bottom, whatever. Perhaps you want to ask Councillor Ashmore if he would include Long Beach Road as part of the memo, and we can get a report back from staff, an update on them both to see what the solutions are. But you'd have to get the mover and a seconder to approve it first.
Yeah. Are you quite happy to do that, or you would like a separate memo, Councillor Ashmore?
Well, whatever works best for, what do you think?
So you're okay adding regarding Ken Hill
What would you
Beach Road
recommend?
drainage and Long Beach Road as well, just for a report back at this point?
Sure, that's fine, yeah. Yep.
Okay, Councillor Yeo, are you okay with that? Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I'll call the question then. All in favor? The motion's passed. Thank you. And the next memo, the last memo, is regarding improvements to Pleasant Point Canal. Again, Councillor Ashmore, your memo, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I believe this CAO had an updated memo or an updated motion to add to that. Could you speak to that, please?
I will, yeah. So what the CAO is suggesting is that the memorandum from Councillor Ashmore that's the last memo. Memorandum from Councillor Ashmore regarding improvements to Pleasant Point Canal be received, that the TSW be requested to review options to improve water quality within the Pleasant Point Canal, that staff review municipal options to improve water quality within the canal, including the option for a culvert, and that staff report back to council by Q3 2021 of options, including costing for solutions, and that this recommendation be forwarded to the next council meeting for consideration. So if you're okay with that, it's your memo, Councillor Ashmore, you'll move that?
I'll move that. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want to second that? Councillor Yeo, thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Ashmore?
No, I'm fine, thanks. I think this covers everything. It's great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. You good?
Yeah, I'm glad they put the TSW and stuff in there because we got our hands slapped.
Yeah, there was some back and forth, and CAO's on the line just about whose jurisdiction it is, but we can explore all the options, ask them to explore their options, and maybe we can come up with a bit of a solution for the residents. So Ron's here for any clarification if you need it, but is there any questions regarding the memo? Comments? I'll call the question then. All in favor? That motion's passed. Thank you. We don't have any closed session, and I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Elmsley. All in favor? The motion's passed. Thank you, folks. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks, probably on Zoom.
Made it, 1% left.
Yeah.